air in the archive sector of orbital station Aurora's Edge always tasted like ozone and stale coffee, recycled one too many times through scrubbers that were 5 years past their maintenance date. Kai Arden rubbed the grit from his eyes, the heels of his palms digging into sockets that felt bruised from 12 straight hours of staring at the blue-white glare of a hollow terminal. It was 3 in the morning. Ship time. The rest of the station was powered down to night cycle, leaving the vast, curved corridors of the data processing deck bathed in emergency amber lighting. Only Kai's workstation remained fully lit, a lonely island of high-resolution clarity in a sea of shadowed server racks that hummed like a hive of sleeping insects. He leaned back in his chair, the synthetic leather creaking in protest. His spine popped, a sharp report in the silence. Another error. Kai groaned, leaning forward to tap the glass surface of his console. The data stream froze. A red line of corrupted code slashed through the middle of the diplomatic transcript he was supposed to be sanitizing. Great, he muttered to himself. Just great. He stood up, needing to stretch his legs before his muscles atrophied completely. He walked to the viewing port that dominated the far wall of the sector. The blast shield was retracted, offering a panoramic view of the void that usually made the new recruits weep with existential dread. Kai just looked at it with the dull appreciation of a man who had seen too much emptiness to be impressed by it anymore. Outside, the universe was a bruised tapestry of violet and black. The station drifted at the edge of the Kestrel Nebula, a churning storm of ionized gas that stretched across 3 light years. But it was not the nebula that drew the eye. Floated off the starboard docking ring was the Ethelgard, the flagship of the Seraphic Dominion. It was a monstrosity of silver-blue elegance, shaped like a teardrop falling upward. Unlike the blocky utilitarian steel of human ships, the alien vessel looked grown rather than built. Its hull pulsed with a faint rhythmic luminescence, a heartbeat of pure energy that rippled from prow to stern. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was the symbol of the fragile, terrified peace that currently held humanity and the Dominion in a chokehold. Kai pressed his forehead against the cold, transparent steel. He could see the tiny insect-like silhouettes of patrol drones buzzing around the flagship's hull. Peace, he thought bitterly. They called it peace. He called it a waiting room for the next war. His comms unit chirped on his wrist, breaking the silence. Arden, you still awake down there? It was Jensen, the night shift supervisor, probably bored out of his mind in the command center. Kai tapped the receiver. Unfortunately, the parsing algorithm choked on another syntax error in the ambassador's speech. Apparently, the Dominion dialect for mutual cooperation shares a root phoneme with ritual disembowelment, and the auto-scrubber is having a panic attack. Jensen snorted over the line. Just patch it. Nobody reads the raw logs anyway. It is all for the archives. Just make sure the ambassador sounds like he loves us and hates tariffs. That is my job, Kai said, staring at his reflection in the dark glass. Pale skin, dark circles under eyes that looked too old for 28 years, hair that hadn't seen a comb in 2 days. Glorified cleaner. I scrub the dirt off the truth so the brass does not have to get their hands dirty. Hey, it pays the rent. Finish the batch. Arden. I want the servers cycled by 0600. The line clicked dead. Kai sighed and turned back to his workstation. He hated how controlled it all felt. Every transmission that passed through this room was sliced, diced, and rearranged until reality matched the narrative the Earth Coalition wanted to sell. He was not a technician. He was a fiction writer working with dry facts. He sat back down, cracking his knuckles. "All right, let us see what is choking the system." He brought up the error log. Usually these glitches were simple. Bit rot from deep space transmission or a translation matrix misalignment. He reached out to drag the corrupted file into the diagnostic sandbox. His fingers paused over the haptic interface. This was not bit rot. The code was not static. It was moving. Kai frowned, leaning closer. The encrypted cluster sat in the middle of the data stream like a drop of ink in a glass of water. But instead of dissolving, it was spinning, spiraling. The hexadecimal strings were not arranging themselves in standard linear blocks. They were weaving together, forming fractals that bloomed and collapsed in milliseconds. It looked elegant. It looked alive. "What are you?" Kai whispered. Standard protocol was immediate isolation and a purge command. Anything that did not match recognized encryption protocols was treated as a Class 4 viral threat. He should hit the big red button, wipe the sector, and fill out a report that would have him stuck in debriefing for 6 hours. But the pattern was mesmerizing. It flickered with a rhythm that felt vaguely biological, like the pulse he had seen on the alien ship outside. Curiosity, the fatal flaw of every good technician, took hold of his hands. Instead of the purge command, Kai opened a private air-gapped sandbox environment, a digital quarantine zone where he could poke at the code without risking the station's mainframe. He dragged the shimmering cluster into the box. The moment the file crossed the threshold, the hum of the servers changed pitch. It went from a low drone to a high, vibrating whine that set Kai's teeth on edge. Warning. File density exceeds memory allocation, the computer announced, its synthetic voice sounding sluggish, warped. Kai ignored it. He typed in a decryption command, using a brute force key cracker he had written himself for boredom relief. "Run," he muttered, tapping the execute key. The world tilted. It was not a metaphor. For a split second, the artificial gravity plating under his chair surged, pinning him down with double his own weight, then cut out entirely, leaving him floating 3 inches off the seat. The emergency lights in the ceiling flared blindingly bright, then shattered into sparks. Kai yelped, grabbing the edge of the console to anchor himself as the gravity slammed back on. He hit the chair hard, the breath knocked out of him. On his screen, the fractal pattern exploded. It did not stay on the screen. A beam of cohesive light shot out from the hollow projector, thick and solid as a physical pillar. It hit the ceiling, refracted, and bent downward, pooling on the metal surface of his wide desk. The air in the room suddenly dropped 10 degrees. Frost crystals bloomed on the edges of the monitors. Kai scrambled backward, his chair rolling until it hit the wall with a clang. The light on the desk began to sculpt itself. It was not the grainy, semi-transparent blue of a standard hologram. This was dense, photonic matter, hard light. It swirled like water down a drain, knitting together skeletal structures, musculature, skin, hair. In 3 seconds, a woman was lying on his desk. Kai stopped breathing. She was humanoid, but no one would ever mistake her for human. She was long-limbed and terrifyingly perfect, her skin the color of moonlight on snow, luminous and pale. Her hair was a cascade of iridescent fibers that floated around her head as if she were underwater, shifting from violet to teal with every micro-movement of the air. She gasped, a sound that was less like air in lungs and more like the chime of a crystal bell. Her eyes snapped open. They were not eyes. They were gemstones, multifaceted and lacking whites or pupils, burning with an internal amber fire. Kai pressed his back against the wall, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He reached blindly for the emergency alarm panel by the door, his fingers trembling. The woman pushed herself up. Her movements were fluid. too smooth, lacking the jerkiness of biological muscle. She looked at her own hands, flexing long, slender fingers, then turned those burning amber eyes toward him. She spoke. The sound that came out of her mouth was a melodic trill, a sequence of harmonics that made Kai's inner ear ache. It was beautiful and incomprehensible. Then, the station's translation matrix, which shouldn't have been able to interface with a physical manifestation like this, screeched through the overhead speakers, recalibrating, synchronization, complete. The woman spoke again. This time, her lips moved out of sync with the flat, synthesized voice of the translator, but the intent carried a weight that pinned Kai to the wall. "Do not touch that alarm. Human. If you report me, we are both dead within the hour." Kai's hand froze inches from the red lever. He swallowed, his throat dry as sandpaper. "Who? What are you?" She slid off the desk. Her feet touched the floor silently. She was tall, towering over him even from across the room. She wore a bodysuit that looked like it was woven from the same data stream that had created her. Dark, shifting geometric patterns that hugged her form like a second skin. She raised her chin, an imperious gesture that seemed as natural to her as breathing. "I am Lyriel Saith, of the High House of Ethelgard. You would call me Princess, and you, data miner, have just kidnapped me." Kai laughed. It was a hysterical, jagged sound that escaped before he could stop it. "Kidnapped? I was running a sanitation script. You were a bug in the system." Her eyes narrowed, the facets spinning slightly. "A bug. I am the heir to the Seraphic Dominion, and I am currently compressed into a crude, unstable waveform inside your primitive computer architecture." She took a step toward him. Kai noticed with a jolt of visceral shock that the strange, dark markings running along her collarbones and down her arms were pulsing. They beat in time with a rhythm he could almost feel in the air, a low-frequency thrumming. She was stunning, not just in the aesthetic sense, but in the way a supernova was stunning. It hurt to look at her directly. The light she emitted cast sharp, unnatural shadows around the archive bay. Kai forced himself to look away from the curve of her waist, the way the light played over the arch of her neck. He focused on her face, which was currently set in a mask of haughty annoyance. "Princess," Kai managed, his voice cracking. "Okay. Princess, this is a simulation, right? The guys in CyberSec are pranking me. Jensen put you up to this. Lyra, she had called herself, tilted her head. Her iridescent hair drifted around her shoulders, ignoring gravity. "You think I am a fiction? I think people do not materialize out of encrypted emails," Kai shouted, waving his hands. "You are a hologram, a very expensive, very illegal hologram." Lyra let out a short, sharp breath that might have been a laugh. "Extend your hand." "What?" "Give me your hand. Human. Unless you are afraid of a fiction." Kai hesitated. He looked at the alarm again. If this was a Dominion trick, touching her might kill him. If this was a security test, failing to report it would get him fired. But the sheer absurdity of the moment held him paralyzed. Slowly, he reached out. Lyra reached out too. Her hand was slender, the fingers longer than a human's, tipped with nails that looked like black glass. Her palm met his. Kai expected his hand to pass through light. He expected cold static. Instead, she was warm. It was a feverish, intense heat, like touching the casing of a reactor core. And it was solid. He could feel the bone structure beneath the skin, the tension in her tendons. But beneath the warmth, there was a vibration, a high-speed buzzing that traveled up his arm, bypassing his nerves and hitting his brain directly. A flash of white light blinded him for a nanosecond. He tasted copper. He smelled rain on hot pavement. He felt a wave of terror and exhaustion that wasn't his own. Kai jerked his hand back with a gasp, stumbling. He cradled his fingers against his chest. "What the hell was that?" he wheezed, the room spinning. "Bioenergetic feedback," Lyra said calmly, though he noticed her hand was trembling too. "My consciousness is encoded in a quantum state. To exist here, I must borrow stability from the local matter. When we touch, our biofields intersect." She looked around the cramped, dusty room with a critical eye, her glowing gaze sweeping over the stacks of old hard drives and the half-eaten protein bar on his desk. "So this is where I have landed," she mused. "A dust trap, a tomb for dead data. It smells of despair and burnt lipids." "Hey," Kai snapped, finding his footing again. "That is my office, and you are the one who crashed in here." Lyra turned to him, and for a moment, the regal mask slipped, her shoulders slumped, the light of her skin dimmed slightly, revealing a deep weariness etched into her alien features. "I did not crash," she said softly. "I was escaping." "Escaping what?" "My own murder." The word hung in the cold air between them. Kai stared at her. The silence of the archive sector suddenly felt heavy, oppressive. "Murder?" Kai whispered. "You said you are a princess. Who tries to kill a princess of the Dominion?" "Everyone," Lyra said dryly, "especially when she knows too much." She walked, no. She prowled toward the window, looking out at the distant shape of the Ethelgard. Her expression was unreadable, caught between longing and fear. "They tried to kill me in my own chambers," she said, her voice low. "A poison that targets the genetic markers of the royal line. I had seconds. My personal guard, he was dead before he hit the floor. I had one option, an experimental transmission protocol I had been researching. It turns consciousness into a data stream. It was meant for deep space exploration, not this." She gestured to her own body. "I broadcasted myself blindly. I aimed for a secure relay, but the signal was intercepted, scattered. I pulled myself together in the nearest dense data cluster I could find." She turned to face him again. "Your station, your terminal." Kai ran a hand through his hair, gripping the strands tight. "This is insane. This is treason. If the Dominion finds out I have you..." "They will vaporize this station," Lyra finished for him. "And if your government finds out, they will dissect me to learn how the transmission tech works. We are in a bind. Data miner. Kai. My name is Kai." "Kai." Lyra tested the name. It sounded exotic in her accent. The vowels stretched. "Well, Kai, unless you wish to be vaporized or dissected, you are going to help me." "Help you? I fix corrupt files. I do not engage in interstellar espionage." Before Lyra could respond, a heavy thud echoed from the corridor outside. Then the sound of magnetic boots clamping on the deck plates. Voices. "Power surge detected in Sector 4 Alpha. Check the terminals. Security." Kai's blood ran cold. He looked at Lyra. "If they walk in here and see a glowing alien woman..." "Hide," he hissed. "Where?" Lyra looked around frantically. "There is nowhere to..." The door chime beeped. "Override code accepted." Kai panicked. "Do the light thing. Turn back into data. I cannot just..." "Open the door!" a voice commanded from outside. Lyra's eyes widened. She looked at Kai, then at the console on his wrist, a bulky, standard-issue tech pad. She lunged at him. Kai flinched, but she did not hit him. She grabbed his wrist. Her body suddenly dissolved. It was not a fade. It was a violent deconstruction. One moment she was solid. The next, she was a swirling vortex of blue and violet sparks that spiraled down, shrinking, compressing, until they poured directly into the port on his wrist console. The screen of his wrist pad flared white, then settled into a frantic, pulsing rhythm of the same impossible pattern he had seen earlier. The door hissed open. 2 station security officers stood there, stun batons drawn. Their visors were down, reflecting the amber emergency lights. "Arden?" the lead officer barked. "We registered a massive electromagnetic spike in here." Sensors said gravity failed for 3 seconds. "What are you doing?" Kai stood frozen, his right hand gripping his left wrist, trying to hide the glowing screen against his hip. He forced a smile that felt like a rictus of terror. "Hey, officers." "Yeah, sorry, and it was the coffee maker." The officer stared at him. "The coffee maker caused a localized gravity failure? It is a really old machine?" Kai tried, sweating. "Look, I was running a decryption on a corrupted diplomatic file. It must have created a feedback loop in the haptic drive. I kicked the desk, and it reset. Everything is green now." The officer stepped into the room, scanning the corners. He looked at the frost on the monitors. "It is freezing in here," he noted suspiciously. Thermal regulator blew when the surge hit. Kai lied quickly. "I put in a maintenance ticket already." The guard scanned the room one last time, his gaze lingering on the empty space where Lyra had been standing 10 seconds ago. "Finally," he grunted and holstered his baton. "Watch your equipment, Arden. Next time you trip the sensors, we are writing you up for negligence." "We are just on edge," the second guard muttered. "The Dominion flagship is scanning everything. They say they lost a sensitive communication packet. Everyone is jumpy." Kai's heart skipped a beat. A sensitive packet. That was her. "I will keep it locked down," Kai said. The door hissed shut. Kai let out a breath that was half sob. He slumped against the desk, his legs giving out. He looked down at his wrist. The screen was dark. "Lyra?" he whispered. "Nothing." Did I kill her?" Suddenly, the screen flickered. A stream of particles shot out of the emitter, arching through the air like a bolt of lightning. It struck the top of the workbench 3 feet away. Lyra materialized instantly, not standing this time, but sitting on the edge of the bench, her legs crossed, her posture regaining that terrifying regality. But her light was dimmer now, pulsing erratically. The effort had cost her. "That," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "was undignified." Kai stared at her, then began to laugh again, a low rumble of pure hysteria. "Undignified? You were inside my watch. You were literally inside my watch." Lyra smoothed her iridescent hair, composing herself. It was a tight squeeze. "Your hardware is archaic." It felt like trying to fit a starship into a bottle. She hopped off the bench, but her knees buckled. She stumbled forward. Kai moved without thinking. He lunged and caught her by the arms. Again, the heat, the shock, the feeling of bioelectricity humming against his skin. But this time, he didn't pull away. He held her steady, his hands gripping her waist to keep her upright. She was heavy, solid, real. The scent of her was overwhelming. Not ozone anymore, but something floral and spicy, like crushed cinnamon and electricity. Lyra froze. She looked down at his hands on her waist, then up at his face. They were inches apart. Kai could see the intricate geometric patterns of her irises spinning. He could feel the warmth radiating from her chest, could feel the rapid, fluttery beat of her heart, or whatever organ she had against him. He realized, with a sudden, devastating clarity, that she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen in his life, and he was holding her. His gaze dropped, just for a second, tracing the line of her throat, the glowing sigils on her collarbone. the curve of her body in that impossible second skin suit. He snapped his eyes back up to hers, his face flushing hot with embarrassment. Are you okay? He stammered, starting to pull back. But Lyra didn't let go. Her hands came up to rest on his shoulders, steadying herself. A slow, wicked smile spread across her lips. It wasn't the smile of a desperate fugitive. It was the smile of a predator who had just realized the prey was fascinated. She leaned in closer. Her voice dropped to a whisper that seemed to vibrate right in the center of his skull. Lost in thought, human. She tilted her head, her breath warm against his ear. You like my body, don't you? Kai froze. The air left his lungs. The question hung there, balanced perfectly between humor and something much more dangerous. It was a challenge. It was a weapon. And it was true. Kai stammered, his brain misfiring on every cylinder. I was just checking for injuries, structural integrity. Lyra pulled back just enough to look him in the eye, her amusement dancing in the amber fire of her gaze. Structural integrity, she repeated. Deadpan, is that what you call it? She stepped out of his arms, though she stayed close, invading his personal space with an ease that suggested she owned it. Relax, Kai. I am aware of the effect my species has on yours. We were bioengineered to be aesthetically pleasing to 90% of sentient life forms. It is a diplomatic tool. A tool, Kai repeated, his voice sounding hollow. Right. Just a tool. He turned away, busying himself with a stack of data pads to hide the fact that his hands were shaking. God, he was in so much trouble. He had a fugitive alien princess in his office who could turn into light, fit in his watch, and apparently read his mind when he was being a pervert. Lyra's tone shifted, the teasing vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. Kai, look at me. He turned back. She was leaning against the workbench, her arms crossed. The light around her had stabilized, but her expression was grave. You saved me just now, she said. You could have turned me in. You did not. Why? Kai looked at the door where the guards had stood. He thought about his job, the endless scrubbing of lies, the sanitizing of history. He thought about the boredom. He thought about the fear in Lyra's eyes when she had first appeared. I do not know, he admitted. Maybe I am just tired of deleting things. Maybe I wanted to keep something real for once. Lyra studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Good. Because the people who tried to kill me, they are not just my enemies. They are yours too. What does that mean? It means, Lyra said, pacing the small room, that the assassination was not just about the throne. It was about Protocol Emberfall. Protocol what? Emberfall. It is a fabricated initiative, a conspiracy between a faction of my war council and someone high up in your Earth coalition. Kai felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. Wait. Humans and Dominion working together? To do what? To start a war, Lyra said grimly. A war that neither side can win, but one that will generate trillions in credits for the weapon manufacturers and consolidate power for the zealots. They tried to kill me because I found the proof. If I die, the proof dies. And if the proof dies, the war begins. She stopped pacing and looked at him. I need to get to the planetary surface below. There is a summit happening on Kalis 3 in 3 days. I need to expose the truth before the first shot is fired. But I cannot do it alone. I am being hunted by my own flagship. I need a guide. I need someone who knows this station, who knows the systems. She stepped closer again, extending her hand. This time, it wasn't a command. It was an offer. Help me. Kai, help me stop them. Kai looked at her hand. He looked at the window, where the Ethel guard loomed like a silver dagger against the stars. He was a cleaner, a data janitor. He fixed typos. He didn't save princesses. He didn't stop wars. If I do this, he said quietly, my life is over. I will be a fugitive. I will be hunted. I will probably die. Yes, Lyra said simply. The odds of survival are statistically negligible. Kai let out a long, ragged sigh. He looked at his empty coffee cup. He looked at the error-filled screen of his life. Then he looked at Lyra, at the light pulsing beneath her skin, at the terrifying, beautiful reality of her. For the first time in years, he didn't feel tired. He felt terrified, yes. But he felt awake. He reached out and took her hand. The shock was less this time, or maybe he was just getting used to the voltage. Statistically negligible, Kai repeated, a crooked grin forming on his face. That is my favorite kind of odds. Lyra's fingers closed around his, warm and strong. Then let us go. Data miner, she whispered. We have a galaxy to upset. Kai squeezed her hand. All right, Your Highness. But first, you are going to have to get back in the watch. Lyra groaned, the sound echoing melodically in the small room. I hate the watch. Kai laughed, and for the first time that night, the sound wasn't hysterical. It was the sound of a man who had finally found a story worth writing, even if it might be the last one he ever told. Get in, Lyra. We are leaving. She dissolved into light, swirling around his wrist once more. And Kai Arden, traitor to the human race and guardian of the alien dawn, walked out of the archive sector and into the dark. The morning shift on Aurora's edge began with the sonic thrum of atmospheric recyclers kicking into high gear, a vibration that rattled the teeth of everyone on the station. For Kai Arden, however, the rattling was not just mechanical. It was the result of trying to navigate a crowded corridor while a deposed alien princess critiqued human administrative protocols directly into his auditory nerve. You are telling me, Lyra's voice echoed in his head, bypassing his ears entirely via the bone conduction link in his wrist pad, that in order to request a localized maintenance shutoff, you must submit a form in triplicate, wait for a supervisor who is currently asleep to sign it, and then physically walk it to a separate department located on the complete opposite side of the ring? Kai kept his face neutral as he passed a group of groggy stellar cartographers. He tapped his ear as if adjusting a faulty comms unit. That is correct, he muttered under his breath. We call it due process. It keeps us from accidentally venting the cafeteria into space. It is inefficient, Lyra declared. In the Dominion, if I need a door opened, I simply command the door to yield. If it refuses, I have it disassembled. Remind me never to be a door in your palace, Kai whispered. He turned a sharp corner, ducking into a service alcove that smelled of hydraulic fluid and lemon-scented solvent. He swiped his badge against a panel marked Authorized Personnel Only. The light blinked red. Access denied. Kai cursed softly. My clearance does not cover the sub-levels during day cycle. Allow me, Lyra said. A spark of violet electricity jumped from Kai's wrist console to the keypad. The panel did not just turn green, it cycled through every color in the visible spectrum before settling on a terrified, blinking white. The door hissed open with a speed that suggested it was afraid to stay closed. After you. Lyra purred. Kai stepped into the maintenance tunnels. Unlike the sterile, white-paneled corridors of the main decks, the bowels of the station were a mess of exposed pipes, thick cabling, and steam vents. It was dark, lit only by the occasional flickering strip light. Once the door sealed behind them, the air around Kai's wrist shimmered. Light poured out, pooling on the grating floor and knitting itself upward. Lyriel's Sath materialized in a fluid rush of photons. She stood tall amidst the grime, her iridescent bodysuit glowing softly in the gloom, casting long, strange shadows against the rusty pipes. She looked around with an expression of fascinated disgust. "So this is the digestive tract of your station," she observed, stepping gingerly over a puddle of oil. "It is moist." "It is hidden," Kai said, unshouldering his heavy tool bag. "Just like us. We need to get to the secure communications node on level 9 without tripping the internal sensors. That means walking 3 miles through these pipes." Lyra looked at the dark tunnel stretching ahead. Then she looked at Kai, her gemstone eyes softening slightly. "Lead on. Data miner." They moved in silence for a while, the only sounds the clang of Kai's boots on the metal grating and the distant hum of the station's reactor. Lyra moved without sound, her feet hovering a fraction of an inch above the floor when she wasn't paying attention, a side effect of her semi-digital state. As they walked, Kai watched her out of the corner of his eye. She flickered occasionally. Whenever they passed a high-voltage conduit, her form would waver, becoming translucent, revealing the wireframe geometry of light beneath her skin. "You are glitching," Kai noted, worry tightening his chest. "I am fine," Lyra said quickly, though she wrapped her arms around herself. "It is just interference. My consciousness is used to the crystal lattice networks of the Dominion. Your copper wiring is abrasive. It feels like wearing wool directly on the skin." She paused, looking at a junction box covered in warning stickers. "Tell me, Kai, why does your species fracture itself like this? I have been analyzing your station's network traffic. You have factions within factions, corporations, unions, coalitions. Do you not find it exhausting?" Kai chuckled dryly, adjusting the strap of his bag. "We thrive on it. If you put 3 humans in a room, they will invent 4 political parties by lunch. In the Dominion," Lyra said, her voice taking on a lecture hall cadence, "we have the high houses, 7 of them. Each house is a pillar of our society. House Vale handles the arts and philosophy. House Cora commands the stellar navy. My house, Ethelgard, was responsible for preservation and diplomacy." "Was?" Kai asked. "Is," she corrected sharply. "Though lately, the lines are blurring. House Cora, the war faction, has been gaining influence. They believe the universe is a finite resource and that humanity is expanding too quickly. They see your chaotic, fractured nature as a virus." "And you?" Kai asked, stopping to look at her. "What do you see?" Lyra stopped too. She floated closer, her glow illuminating the grime on his face. "I see a species that builds space stations out of rust and hope," she said softly. "I was advocating for the Treaty of Glass. It would have opened our borders, shared our technology. I argued that humanity's chaos is its strength, that you dream in ways we cannot. That is why they tried to kill me." Kai felt a flush of heat rise up his neck. It was hard to breathe when she looked at him like that, like he was a specimen and a savior all at once. "So," he said, forcing his voice to remain steady, "we just need to prove that House Cora is trying to start a war. Easy." "Not just House Cora," Lyra said, her expression darkening. "They have a partner, a human partner." They reached the access hatch for the communications node. It was heavily shielded, designed to withstand a hull breach. Kai knelt, pulling a laser cutter from his bag, but Lyra stopped him. "No," she said. "Cutting will trip the pressure sensors. I must interface." She placed both hands flat against the thick blast door. The bioluminescent patterns on her skin flared. shifting from soft blue to an angry, burning gold. She closed her eyes, her head tilting back. The door groaned. The metal didn't retract. It seemed to dissolve, the molecules vibrating apart until a hole large enough for a person appeared. "Go," Lyra whispered, her voice strained. They scrambled through, emerging into a narrow janitorial closet filled with mop buckets and cleaning drones. Kai peered through the louvered vent into the main room. The comms node was a forest of black server towers, blinking with red and green status lights. 3 security drones hovered near the ceiling, their scanners sweeping the room in lazy figure eights. "We need the terminal in the center," Kai whispered. "It is air-gapped. That is where the diplomatic logs are stored." Lyra nodded. She looked paler now, the effort of phasing the door having drawn on her reserves. "I can distract the drones. My energy signature confuses their logic gates." "Be careful," Kai said, grabbing her arm before she could move. "Do not burn yourself out." She looked down at his hand on her arm, then gave him a tired, crooked smile. "I like it when you worry. Human. It makes me feel valuable." She slipped out of the closet. What followed was a dance of light and shadow. Lyra moved through the server room like a ghost. Whenever a drone swept its scanner toward her, she would flatten herself against a server rack and dissolve into a 2-dimensional texture, becoming nothing more than a decal on the metal surface. As soon as the light passed, she would pop back into 3 dimensions and keep moving. Kai watched, heart in his throat, timing his own run. When the drones turned to investigate a sudden static burst Lyra created in the far corner, Kai sprinted for the central console. He slid into the chair, fingers flying across the keys. Password protected, biometric lock. Lyra appeared beside him, her hand slamming onto the interface panel, her skin lit up with scrolling code. "I am bypassing the biometrics," she hissed. "Just find the file." Kai searched the directory. Date ranges, encrypted flags. There. A file named Project Emberfall. He opened it, the screen filled with schematics and transcripts. Kai's eyes scanned the text, widening with horror. "It is a script," he whispered. "Look at this. It is a script for a play." Lyra leaned over his shoulder, her warmth radiating against his back. "Scene 1, the incident." She read aloud. "Dominion frigate fires on civilian transport near the Kestrel border. No survivors. Visual evidence to be synthesized by deep-fake algorithms provided by..." She stopped. "Provided by Chimera Dynamics." "That is a human megacorp," Kai said, his stomach turning. "They make terraforming equipment and weapons. They are manufacturing a reason to fight," Lyra said, her voice cold with fury. "Protocol Emberfall is not a defense plan. It is a false flag operation. They are going to stage an attack on Kalis 3 during the summit." Kai checked the timestamp on the file. "The summit starts in 48 hours. We have to get the data," Kai said, plugging in a drive. Suddenly, the room turned red. "Intruder alert! Intruder alert!" A drone had spotted them. "Run!" Kai yelled, grabbing the drive. They bolted. Laser fire scorched the floor inches from Kai's heels. A drone swooped down, its taser prongs crackling. Lyra spun around, raising a hand. A pulse of concussive force blasted from her palm, knocking the drone into a server rack with a shower of sparks. They dove back into the maintenance tunnels, the blast door sealing behind them just as the security team's heavy boots pounded into the room. They did not stop running for 10 minutes. They scrambled down ladders, squeezed through steam pipes, and finally collapsed in a narrow alcove behind the water filtration system. It was a tiny space, barely big enough for one person, let alone 2. Kai was pressed back against the cold, curved wall of a tank, and Lyra was pressed against him. Silence fell, heavy and thick, broken only by their ragged breathing. Lyra's body was hot, feverishly so. Her chest heaved against his. Kai could smell the ozone scent of her energy and the underlying sweetness of her perfume. Her knee was wedged between his legs. Her hands were gripping the lapels of his uniform jacket. Kai squeezed his eyes shut. His heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Every nerve ending in his body was screaming, hyper-aware of the contact. He wanted to push her away to give them space, but he also wanted, with a terrifying intensity, to pull her closer. He kept his hands hovering in the air, afraid to touch her, afraid of the feedback loop, afraid of crossing a line. Lyra looked up. In the dim light of the alcove, her eyes were swirling pools of liquid amber. She saw his hesitation. She saw the flush on his cheeks. "You are trembling," she whispered. "Adrenaline." Kai lied, his voice rasping. "Is it?" She shifted slightly, the friction of her bodysuit against his clothes sending a jolt of static through him. She smirked, a faint, knowing curve of her lips. But beneath the teasing, Kai saw something else. Her form was flickering at the edges. Her hands, gripping his jacket, were trembling too. "Hold me," she said. "What?" "I am drifting," she confessed, her voice losing its regal edge. "The energy expenditure, the phasing. I feel like I am scattering into static." She looked at her own hand, which was becoming translucent. "When I am digital, I feel nothing," she whispered. "I am just code. I am cold. I am theoretical. But when I am near you, when I touch you, the biological resonance grounds me. It reminds the system that I am supposed to be real." She looked up at him, her eyes wide and vulnerable. "Make me real, Kai. Just for a moment." Kai let out a shaky breath. He lowered his hands, placing them firmly on her waist. He pulled her against him, eliminating the inch of space that remained. She gasped, her head falling forward onto his shoulder. The contact was electric, a hum of power that vibrated through his bones, but it was also solid. He felt the weight of her. He felt the heat. "I have got you," he murmured into her hair. "You are not going anywhere." They stayed like that for a long time, the station's machinery thrumming around them. Kai focused on the feeling of her breathing, the rise and fall of her chest against his. He felt an anchor dropping in his own soul. He wasn't just a technician anymore. He was a tether for a star. Finally, Lyra pulled back. She looked solid again. The light in her skin was steady. She didn't move away, though. She stayed in the circle of his arms, looking at his mouth. "We need a ship," she said, her voice dropping an octave. Kai blinked, trying to reboot his brain. "A ship? Right, yes. We cannot take a commercial flight to Kalis 3. The blockade will scan us." "We need something fast," Lyra said, "and something unnoticed." "I know a place," Kai said, clearing his throat and reluctantly stepping back, breaking the contact. "Cargo Bay 4. There is a courier vessel impounded for smuggling. The Nightjar. It is small, fast, and off the grid. Can you fly it?" "I can crash it with style," Kai said. "Can you hotwire it?" Lyra straightened her spine, the imperious princess returning. "Kai, I can hotwire a dreadnought with a hairpin. A courier ship is barely a warm-up." The hangar bay was quiet, the vast space dominated by shadows and the sleeping shapes of freight haulers. The Nightjar sat in the corner, a sleek predatory wedge of matte black metal. They approached the airlock. It was sealed with a maglock and a biometric scanner. "Allow me," Lyra said. She didn't use the keypad this time. She jammed her fingers directly into the seam of the doorframe. Kai watched in awe and horror as the metal around her fingers glowed cherry red. the air filled with the smell of ozone and melting alloy. Lyra's eyes rolled back in her head. A shockwave of distortion rippled out from her body. For a second, Kai saw the hangar stretch. The far wall seemed to recede miles into the distance. The colors of the warning lights bled from red to a sickly green. The sound of the air scrubbers slowed down to a deep, demonic groan. "Lyra!" Kai shouted, reaching for her. The distortion snapped back. The door hissed open. Lyra stumbled back, panting, smoke curling from her fingertips. "I am fine," she wheezed, waving him off. "Just recalibrating the local reality matrix. Get us in the air." Kai dragged her into the cockpit. It was cramped, designed for a single pilot and maybe a crate of contraband. He threw himself into the pilot's seat and began flipping switches. The dashboard lit up like a Christmas tree. Reactor online, thrusters priming, mag clamps released. He grabbed the yoke. "Hang on." The nightjar shot out of the hangar bay, blowing past the surprise traffic control drones and banking hard toward the jump gate. 2 hours later, they were in Lightfold, the hyperspace tunnel that connected the systems. Outside the viewport, the stars were streaks of blue neon. Inside, the ship was quiet. There was only one bunk in the rear compartment. It was narrow, barely wide enough for one human, let alone a human in a Dominion Royal. They sat on the edge of it, knees touching. Lyra was examining a datapad they had stolen from the station, scrolling through human media feeds with a look of bemused anthropological interest. "Your species is fascinating," she commented, swiping the screen. "You have an entire genre of entertainment dedicated to people almost kissing, but not kissing." "It is called romantic tension," Kai said, rubbing his eyes. "It keeps the audience watching." "It is inefficient," Lyra said. "In the Dominion, if two people desire each other, they file a statement of intent. If the genetic compatibility is within acceptable parameters, they proceed to consummation. It saves a lot of time." "Sounds romantic," Kai said dryly. "Like filing taxes." Lyra looked at him, placing the pad down. "You are shy, aren't you?" "I am not shy. I am respectful of diplomatic immunity." "You are terrified," she corrected, a playful glint in her eye. "You sit there, trying so hard not to look at me, but your pulse rate jumps every time I shift my weight." She leaned back against the bulkhead, stretching her legs out. The movement highlighted the long, elegant lines of her body. "I have seen your history files, Kai," she said softly. "You applied to the Naval Academy 3 times. You wanted to be an explorer, a hero. Why did you stop trying?" Kai looked down at his hands, calloused, stained with grease. "Because heroes are special," he said quietly. "They are born with something extra, courage, destiny, whatever. I am just a guy who fixes things other people break." I froze during the entrance exams. I panicked. Heroes do not panic. Lyra reached out and took his hand. She pulled it toward her, placing his palm flat against the center of her chest, right over her heart. Kai's breath hitched. Through the thin fabric of her suit, he felt the rhythm. Thump, thump. Whir, thump, thump. Whir, it was a dual heartbeat. One biological, heavy and wet. One digital, a rapid-fire vibration of cooling fans and spinning data. "Do you feel that?" she asked. "Yes." "That is the sound of a paradox. I am alive and I am dead. I am here and I am nowhere. Every second, my systems calculate the probability of my total dissolution." She pressed his hand harder against her skin. The radiant marks beneath his palm felt fever-hot. "I am terrified, Kai. Every moment of every day, I am afraid I will blink and fade out forever. Being a hero is not about the absence of fear. It is just being ordinary and terrified and saying yes anyway." She looked deep into his eyes, her expression stripping away all his defenses. "You said yes to me in the archive," she whispered. "You are already a hero, Kai. You are just the last one to know it." The air in the tiny cabin felt charged, thick with static and unspoken words. Kai looked at her, at the alien violet of her lips, the galaxy of light swimming in her eyes. He didn't think. He didn't analyze the data. He leaned in. Lyra met him halfway. The kiss was not like a human kiss. It was a collision of energy. The moment their lips touched, a jolt of pure white electricity arced between them. It tasted like ozone and sugar. Sparks showered down from the overhead light fixture. The ship's control panel beeped wildly. The lights flickered, strobing in time with the pounding of Kai's heart. It was overwhelming. It was an overload of sensory input: heat, light, sound, taste. Kai felt like he was kissing a lightning storm. He felt her hands in his hair, gripping him, anchoring him as reality seemed to bend around them. They pulled apart, gasping. Smoke was drifting from the navigation console. A red warning light was pulsing on the dash. "Warning. Electrical surge in cabin B. Life support cycling." Kai stared at Lyra. His lips tingled. His hair was standing on end. Lyra looked equally disheveled, her skin glowing so brightly it lit up the entire room. She touched her mouth, looking stunned. "Did we?" Kai panted, pointing at the smoking console. "Did we just break the ship by kissing?" Lyra threw her head back and laughed, a bright, crystalline sound that chased away the fear. "I told you," she said, breathless and grinning. "We are dangerously compatible." Kai laughed too, a release of tension that left him feeling lightheaded. He looked at her, really looked at her, and knew that there was no going back. Protocol Emberfall, the Dominion, the Earth Coalition, none of it mattered as much as the woman glowing in the bunk next to him. "We are dropping out of Lightfold," Kai said, checking the nav computer. "We are coming up on Kalis 3. He climbed back into the pilot's seat, Lyra sliding into the co-pilot chair beside him. Her presence felt natural now, necessary. "Here we go," Kai said. "Time to save the galaxy." He pulled the lever to disengage the hyperdrive. The streaks of starlight collapsed back into points of light. The planet Kalis 3 appeared below them, a swirling marble of gas clouds and floating cities. But they were not alone. Kai's blood ran cold. Orbiting the planet was not the peaceful diplomatic envoy they had expected. It was a blockade. Dozens of Dominion warships, sleek and silver, formed a net around the world. And in the center, dwarfing them all, was a dreadnought of the war faction. "That is not a standard patrol," Lyra whispered, her face pale in the light of the console. "That is an invasion fleet." "They are early," Kai said, gripping the controls until his knuckles turned white. "The conspiracy. It is further along than we thought." Lyra looked at him, fear warring with resolve in her eyes. "Then we have to be faster," she said. "Dive. Kai, dive now." Kai pushed the throttle forward and the tiny courier ship plummeted toward the atmosphere, racing against the guns of an empire. The comms panel of the nightjar screamed with a proximity alert, a jagged red waveform that dominated the cockpit. Outside the viewport, the star field was blocked by the silhouette of a Dominion interceptor, a predator made of silver alloy and weapon ports, hanging in the void above the swirling cloud tops of Kalis 3. Kai Arden wiped sweat from his palms onto his trousers. He flipped a switch, killing the sublight engines and letting the courier ship drift. "You have to hide," he said, his voice tight. Lyra stood behind his pilot's chair. She was fully materialized, her skin humming with that low-grade photovoltaic buzz that made the hair on Kai's arms stand up. She looked at the interceptor, her jaw set in a line of regal defiance. "They will scan for life signs," she said. "My biosignature is recorded in their database. If they detect a seraphic royal on a human garbage scow, they will vaporize us before you can open a hailing channel." "Garbage scow is a bit harsh," Kai muttered, typing frantically into the console. "But yes, you need to go into the system. Deep storage." Lyra hesitated. He could see the fear flicker in her gemstone eyes. Going fully digital was dangerous for her. It stripped away the sensation of existence, leaving her cold and blind until she reformed. "Do not let them purge the drive," she warned, her hand resting briefly on his shoulder. It was heavy, warm, real. Then she dissolved. It was not graceful this time. She shattered into a swarm of blue pixels that dove into the dashboard vents. The cockpit light surged brighter, then dimmed to a sullen orange. A single line of code scrolled across his navigation screen. "I am here. Do not get us killed." The comms channel crackled open. "Unidentified courier vessel Nightjar. This is Dominion Patrol Unit V9. Prepare for mandatory cargo inspection. Power down your shields or be fired upon." Kai cleared his throat, forcing his vocal cords to relax. He adopted the tone of a bored, slightly annoyed freight hauler he had practiced 1,000 times in the mirror during his academy days. "Patrol Unit V9. This is Nightjar. Shields are down. I am hauling atmospheric scrubbers for the lower districts. Manifest is open." There was a pause, a long, heavy silence where Kai could hear nothing but the hum of the cooling fans and the frantic beating of his own heart. "Docking clamps engaging," the voice returned. The ship shuddered as the interceptor latched onto their hull. The airlock cycled with a hiss of equalization. Kai spun his chair around just as the inner door slid open. A Dominion officer stepped onto the bridge. He was tall, even for his species, wearing the obsidian and silver armor of the war faction. His helmet was retracted, revealing a face of sharp, pale angles and eyes that looked like chips of ice. He didn't look at Kai. He looked at the air, sniffing, as if he could smell the ozone scent of Lyra's recent presence. "Captain," the officer said. He didn't offer a name. His gauntleted hand rested on the stun baton at his hip. "You are far from the trade lanes." Kai leaned back, trying to look casual. "Shortcut. The nebula interference is hell on the main route. I am on a deadline. The scrubbers do not install themselves." The officer walked slowly around the small cockpit. He ran a gloved finger over the navigation console, right over the vent where Lyra had disappeared. The lights on the dashboard flickered aggressively. A red warning diode blinked rapidly. "Overheat." Kai's stomach dropped. She was reacting to him. The officer's aura was aggressive, hostile, and Lyra's energy was flaring in response, like a cat hissing at a dog. "Your system runs hot," the officer noted, staring at the blinking light. "Old wiring," Kai lied quickly. "I have been meaning to overhaul the coolant loop. Parts are expensive." The officer turned to Kai. His gaze was piercing. "We are looking for a fugitive, a data thief who stole state secrets. I just haul machinery." "Pal," Kai said, meeting the alien's eyes. "Unless your thief is disguised as a crate of air filters, I cannot help you." The officer stared at him for another second, then pulled a scanner from his belt. He swept it over the console. The red light turned solid. The console began to vibrate. Kai held his breath. If she flared now, if she popped out of the system to fight him. "Please," Kai thought, projecting the thought as loud as he could. "Stay down. Stay cold." The vibration smoothed out. The light dimmed. The scanner beeped a negative tone. The officer frowned, tapping the device against his palm. "Clear," he muttered, sounding disappointed. He turned back to the airlock. "Move along, human. But if I see this ship deviate from the atmospheric approach vector, I will turn you into debris." "Understood," Kai said. The airlock hissed shut. The docking clamps released with a metallic clang. Kai slumped in his chair, exhaling a breath he felt like he had been holding for an hour. "You can come out," he whispered. The console flared. Lyra erupted from the dashboard, reforming in the center of the cockpit. She was panting, her light wild and jagged, her hair floating in a halo of static. "That," she hissed, pointing a trembling finger at the airlock, "was Lord Vareth's lieutenant. I could feel his intent. It tasted like ash." "He is gone," Kai said, reaching out to steady her. "We are clear." Lyra flinched away from his hand, wrapping her arms around herself. She was shaking. "I wanted to burn him," she whispered. "I was inside the ship's fire control system. I could have vented the plasma exhaust right into his face. It took everything I had not to pull the trigger. But you didn't," Kai said softly. "You stayed hidden. That is what matters." Lyra looked at him, her eyes wide and haunted. She wasn't just afraid of being caught. She was afraid of what she was becoming. A weapon. "Get us to the surface," she said, her voice hollow. "Before I change my mind, Kalis 3 was a world of violent duality. From the upper atmosphere, it looked like a pearl wrapped in storm clouds. As the nightjar descended, the clouds parted to reveal the floating cities. Massive circular platforms the size of continents, anchored against the planet's crushing gravity by anti-grav pylons that hummed with a sound deep enough to vibrate the bones. Above the platforms, the sky was a twilight violet, lit by the glow of the gas ocean far below. The cities themselves were spires of crystal and chrome, connected by ribbon-thin sky bridges that arched over drops of 10,000 feet. Kai steered the ship away from the glittering upper docks where the diplomatic yachts were berthing. He aimed for the lower quadrant, the industrial underbelly of the floating city. They touched down in a hangar that smelled of sulfur and fried oil. The moment the ramp lowered, the noise hit them. It was a bazaar, a chaotic sprawl of tents and stalls jammed into the structural supports of the city. Steam vented from food carts. Music, a clash of human synth-pop and Dominion harmonic chanting, blasted from speakers. Lyra pulled the hood of her borrowed mechanic's cloak low over her face. She stepped onto the metal grating, her eyes wide. "It is loud," she observed. "It is life," Kai said, checking his blaster pistol beneath his jacket. "Keep your head down. We need to find a place called the Rusty Cog." They moved through the crowd. It was a crush of bodies, human traders shouting prices, multi-armed dock workers hauling crates, smugglers selling illicit tech. Lyra paused at a stall selling street food. A vendor was frying skewers of something purple and tentacled. "What is that?" she asked, wrinkling her nose but leaning closer. "Squid rat on a stick," Kai said, grabbing her elbow to keep her moving. "Do not eat it. It tastes like chicken. If the chicken had a gambling problem and died in a swamp." Lyra looked at a display of souvenirs next to the food cart. There were bobblehead dolls of the Dominion High Council. She picked one up. It was a caricature of herself, plastic, with exaggerated eyes and a button on the base. She pressed it. "Greetings, citizens," the doll chirped in a tinny voice. "Harmony is our strength." Lyra stared at it. "I do not sound like that." "You sound a little like that," Kai teased. "I do not chirp," she said, offended. "I resonate." She put the doll down, but Kai saw a flicker of amusement in her eyes. It was good to see. It made her look less like a fugitive princess and more like a tourist on a bad vacation. They found the rusty cog tucked behind a fusion generator repair shop. It was a bar carved out of a decommissioned engine turbine. Inside, the air was thick with smoke. Kai walked straight to a booth in the back where a woman was reshuffling a deck of holographic cards. Mara. The woman looked up. She was striking, human, mostly, but with cybernetic weaving tracing silver lines across her jaw and a pair of eyes that shifted color from green to gold. Kai Arden, she drawled, her voice like whiskey over gravel. I heard you were scrubbing servers on Aurora's edge. Did you finally get bored of being respectable? Something like that, Kai said, sliding into the booth. Mara's gaze flicked to Lyra, who was standing stiffly beside the table. And who is the glow stick? This is... Kai started. Lyra sat down, pulling back her hood. I am the client, and I require credentials. Tech support clearance for the summit hall. Mara raised an eyebrow, looking from Lyra's luminous skin to Kai's tired face. A Dominion pureblood, Mara mused, and a royal one, judging by the bone structure. Kai, you always did aim high. We need the IDs. Mara, Kai said, cutting off the interrogation. Can you do it or not? Mara leaned forward, ignoring Lyra completely to focus on Kai. She reached out, her fingers trailing lightly over Kai's hand on the table. For you, I can do anything. Remember, Cartagena? You owe me a drink for that extraction. Kai pulled his hand back gently. That was a long time ago. Mara, not so long. She purred, winking. You still look good when you are desperate. Lyra made a sound that was half scoff, half growl. The light in the booth flickered. The holographic cards on the table fizzled out. Mara looked at Lyra, amused. Careful. Princess, you are leaking voltage. I am not leaking, Lyra snapped, her voice icy. I am expressing dissatisfaction with the service. Do we have a deal? Mara laughed, leaning back. Sensitive. Fine. 5,000 credits. I will have the badges coded in an hour. An hour later. They were walking away from the bar, freshly forged ID badges in their pockets. The bazaar was bustling, but the silence between Kai and Lyra was deafening. She likes you, Lyra said suddenly. Who? Mara? Kai glanced at her. No. She likes chaos. I am just a reliable source of it. She touched you, Lyra said. She has cybernetic tactile sensors in her fingertips. She was reading your pulse. She was flirting. Kai stopped, turning to face her. The neon light of a noodle stall washed over them. Are you jealous? He asked, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. Jealousy is a primitive emotion rooted in resource scarcity, Lyra said, lifting her chin. I am merely noting that her professional conduct was lacking. Right, Kai said. Resource scarcity. Lyra looked away, her expression crumbling slightly. I have never had to compete for attention, she admitted quietly. In the court, everyone looked at me. I was the sun. But she looked at you like she knew you, like she had a claim. She looked back at him, her eyes vulnerable. I do not like it, Kai. It makes me feel small. Kai stepped closer, lowering his voice so the passers-by wouldn't hear. Lyra, he said. She knows the old me, the guy who ran away, the guy who was afraid. She doesn't know the guy who is standing here with you. He reached out, his fingers brushing the back of her hand. Nobody has a claim on me, he whispered. Not unless I want them to. Lyra's breath hitched. She looked at his hand, then up at his face. The jealousy didn't vanish, but it shifted, turning into something hotter, sharper. Then let us finish this mission, she said, so I can claim you properly. Kai swallowed hard. That was a promise. The summit complex was a masterpiece of architectural arrogance. The main hall was a cavern of glass and light, the floor polished to a mirror sheen that reflected the starscape ceiling above. Delegates from 100 worlds mingled, their voices a low hum of polite deception. Humans in formal suits clinked glasses with Dominion dignitaries in flowing silk robes. Kai and Lyra, dressed in gray technician jumpsuits, moved along the periphery. The security checkpoint was ahead, a shimmering force field gate that scanned every atom of anyone who walked through. "I cannot go through that," Lyra whispered. "My biosignature is too high. It will scream the moment I step inside." Kai checked his pocket. He pulled out a small metallic disc Mara had given them, a phase veil. It was illegal, unstable, and dangerous. "You have to use the veil," he said. "It will shift your molecules out of phase by 2 seconds. You will be invisible to the scanner, but it will feel like being torn apart." Lyra finished grimly. "I know." She took the disc and pressed it against her neck. "Do it," she said. Kai activated the device remotely from his datapad. Lyra gasped. Her body didn't disappear, it fractured. It was like looking at her through a broken prism. Her outline shimmered, turning into a jagged sketch of light. She let out a low sound of pain, her hands clutching her stomach. "Walk," Kai whispered. "Now." She stumbled forward. To the guards, she was a blur of motion, a glitch in their peripheral vision. Kai walked beside her, pretending to check a readout, muttering about signal interference to cover the soft, static-filled whimpers coming from her. They passed through the gate. The scanner stayed silent. Once they were clear, Kai deactivated the veil. Lyra solidified instantly, nearly collapsing. Kai caught her, propping her up against a marble pillar. "I am okay," she wheezed, wiping a trickle of luminous blue blood from her nose. "Just dizzy." "Where is the meeting?" "Level 4, Kai said. "The observation deck." They didn't take the lift. They climbed the service ladder inside the ventilation shaft, emerging onto a narrow maintenance gantry high above the observation deck. Below them, in a private chamber walled with soundproof glass, 2 men sat at a table. One was Director Hollis, a heavy-set human with a smile that looked like it had been surgically attached. The other was Lord Vareth, the Dominion warlord Lyra had fled from. Kai pulled out a directional microphone and a recording device. He pointed it at the glass. The audio crackled into their earpieces. "Production schedule is tight," Hollis was saying. "The synthetic footage needs to be flawless. If the pixel rendering on the massacre looks fake, the public won't buy it." "It will be convincing," Vareth replied, his voice deep and smooth. "We have captured 50 human colonists from the mining belt. We will execute them using Dominion plasma rifles. The footage will be real. Only the context will be manufactured." Kai's hand shook so hard the microphone rattled against the railing. They weren't just faking a video. They were going to slaughter 50 people to make it look authentic. "And the timing?" Hollis asked. "Tomorrow at noon," Vareth said, "during the closing ceremony. We broadcast the footage to every screen in the galaxy. The outrage will be instantaneous. The alliance will crumble, and the war appropriations bill will pass by evening." "Excellent," Hollis said, raising a glass of wine. "Two profitable, chaotic futures." Kai stopped recording. He looked at Lyra. Her face was a mask of horror. "They are going to kill them," she whispered. "My people." "Killing yours?" "Just for a headline." "We have the evidence," Kai said, clutching the drive. "We can stop it." Suddenly, Lyra gasped. She grabbed the railing, her knuckles turning white. Her body flickered. It wasn't a small glitch this time. Her entire left side dissolved into binary code, then snapped back. Her legs turned transparent. Her voice, when she spoke, was layered with digital distortion. Kai, I cannot. Hold. She collapsed. Kai dropped the microphone and caught her. It was like catching a ghost. His hands passed halfway through her arm before finding purchase on something solid. Lyra, stay with me. She was convulsing, her form cycling rapidly between flesh and light. The stress of the phase veil, the anger, the exhaustion, it was too much. She was destabilizing. I am fading, she stuttered, her eyes rolling back, the gemstones dulling to gray. The signal is too weak. No. Kai dragged her back from the edge of the gantry, into the shadows of the maintenance chamber. He pulled her into his lap, wrapping his arms around her glitching form. He pressed his forehead against hers. Listen to me. You are Lyriel Saith. You are real. You are here. Feel this. He grabbed her hand and pressed it against his chest, right over his pounding heart. Feel that? That is fear. That is real. You are not Data. You are the woman who broke into my office. You are the woman who made me steal a ship. Stay here. Stay now. The raw panic in his voice, the sheer biological intensity of his fear, seemed to act as a tether. Lyra gasped, her form snapping back into focus. The transparency faded. The warmth returned. She clung to him, burying her face in his neck. She was sobbing, a sound that was heartbreakingly human. I am scared, she wept. I do not want to be a signal. I want to be here. You are here, Kai soothed, stroking her iridescent hair. I have got you. She pulled back, looking at him. Her face was inches from his. The tears on her cheeks were glowing like liquid diamonds. Kai, she whispered, this mission, this duty, it feels like a cage. What do you mean? I mean that I have spent my whole life being a symbol, she said, her voice trembling. A princess, a diplomat, a fugitive. But right now, with you, I do not want to be any of those things. She reached up, cupping his face. Her hands were hot, trembling. I look at you, and I feel like I am betraying my species. It is forbidden. It is wrong. But it is the only honest thing I have felt in years. Lyra, I do not want you as an ally. Kai, I do not want you as a guide. She leaned in, her gaze dropping to his lips. I want you as a man. Kai's breath caught in his throat. The logic part of his brain, the part that knew they were in a maintenance vent above a room full of murderers, screamed at him to stop. But the rest of him? The rest of him had been waiting for this since the moment she appeared on his desk. He didn't pull away. He leaned forward and kissed her. This wasn't like the accidental spark on the ship. This was deliberate. It was heavy. It was desperate. Lyra made a low sound in her throat and pressed herself against him. Her hands gripped the fabric of his jumpsuit, bunching it up, as if she needed to hold on to the physical world to keep from floating away. Kai kissed her back with a hunger that frightened him. He tasted the static on her skin, the salt of her tears. He felt the dual rhythm of her heart beating against his own, sinking up until he couldn't tell where he ended and she began. It was a kiss that tasted of impending doom and absolute relief. It was the feeling of falling off a cliff and realizing you didn't care about hitting the bottom, as long as you fell together. For a minute, the conspiracy didn't exist. The war didn't exist. There was only the heat of her body and the desperate, boundary-pushing intimacy of two people who were never supposed to touch. Then, reality crashed back in. A door slammed somewhere below. Voices echoed. Kai pulled back. It was the hardest thing he had ever done. He had to physically peel his hands away from her waist. He was breathing hard, his lips swollen, his eyes wide. Lyra looked wrecked, beautiful and unraveled, her glow pulsing with a soft, rhythmic rose-gold light. "We can't," Kai whispered, his voice shaking. Lyra looked at him, hurt flashing in her eyes. "You do not want... I want everything." Kai cut her off fiercely. "I want you more than I want to breathe. But if we do this now, if we lose focus, those people down there die." He touched her cheek, his thumb brushing away a glowing tear. "We save them first. Then I am yours." Lyra stared at him. She saw the resolve in his eyes, the terror and the love warring for dominance. She nodded slowly. "First we save the galaxy," she whispered, a sad smile touching her lips. "Then you are mine." Kai nodded, helping her stand. Suddenly a siren began to wail, a harsh mechanical shriek that echoed through the entire complex. "Attention, attention. Security breach detected. Lockdown initiated." Kai looked at the recording device in his hand. "They know," he said. Lyra's eyes hardened. The vulnerability vanished, replaced by the steel of a queen. "Then let us make sure they regret it." She turned toward the exit, her form solid, her light burning bright. The conspiracy had started their war, but they hadn't counted on the princess and the data miner. The alarms blared, signaling the beginning of the end. The fake attack was starting, and the real fight had just begun. The galaxy did not end with a bang. It ended with a lie, broadcast at the speed of light to 1 trillion screens. One moment, the summit hall was a murmur of polite conversation and the clink of crystal flutes. The next, the massive holographic dome overhead, which had been displaying a tranquil star field, turned a violent, blood-soaked crimson. The air itself seemed to scream. The emergency klaxons were not just auditory, they vibrated in the bone. On the overhead projection, the serene image of the Kalis 3 nebula vanished. It was replaced by high-definition footage of a Dominion colony burning. Human destroyers, emblazoned with the Earth Coalition crest, were shown raining plasma fire onto civilian shelters. The audio was a chaotic mix of screaming children and cold, methodical human commands to purge the sector. It was fake. Kai knew it was fake. He had heard the script being written 10 minutes ago. But to the thousands of delegates in the room, it was the apocalypse. Panic was instantaneous and absolute. A Dominion ambassador roared in fury, overturning a table. A human diplomat screamed as a wine glass shattered in her hand. The fragile peace, held together by decades of negotiation, evaporated in 3 seconds. Then the station's systems began to die. The gravity plating surged. Kai felt his stomach lurch into his throat as the floor beneath him ceased to generate pull. He floated upward, his boots leaving the polished mirror floor. Around him, debris, shattered glass, hors d'oeuvres, data pads, drifted in a slow-motion cloud of chaos. Strobe lights from the security grid began to flash, turning the room into a disorienting nightmare of white bursts and pitch-black intervals. "Run!" Kai shouted, though the sound was swallowed by the cacophony of the crowd. He grabbed Lyra's hand. She was anchoring herself against a pillar, her body glowing with a fierce, erratic light that cut through the strobes. "We need the core," she yelled back, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "The Nexus array is in the sub-level vault. It is the only place I can override the broadcast." They kicked off the pillar, swimming through the zero-gravity air. It was a terrifying, cinematic traversal. They pulled themselves along the floating railing of the balcony, dodging a screaming dignitary who was tumbling helplessly end over end. A security drone, confused by the conflicting protocols, spun wildly in the air, firing stun blasts at random. A bolt of blue energy sizzled past Kai's ear, singing the collar of his jumpsuit. "Down!" Kai gasped, yanking Lyra toward a maintenance hatch in the floor, or what used to be the floor. They hauled themselves through the opening just as the gravity slammed back on. They hit the metal grating of the service corridor hard, the breath knocked out of them. Kai groaned, rolling onto his back. He looked at Lyra. She was already scrambling up, her movements frantic. The bioluminescent patterns on her skin were flashing rapidly, syncing with the frantic beat of the station's alarm. "Are you intact?" she demanded, hauling him up. "I am fine," Kai lied, ignoring the bruising on his ribs. "Just getting used to being a pinball." "We have to move," Lyra said, her eyes burning with a terrifying resolve. Every second that footage plays, another 1,000 ships mobilize for war. They ran. The corridors leading to the server vault were a gauntlet of failing systems. Blast doors opened and slammed shut in random rhythms. Steam vented from ruptured coolant lines, filling the air with a thick, white fog that smelled of chemicals. They reached the vault entrance. It was a massive circular door, reinforced with titanium and sealed with a triple redundant quantum lock. "Stand back," Lyra ordered. She didn't use a keypad. She didn't use a phase veil. She slammed both palms against the metal. Her body became a conduit. Kai watched, shielding his eyes, as raw energy poured from her into the door mechanism. It wasn't the precise, controlled hacking she had done before. This was brute force. It was a scream of digital authority. The heavy gears of the door shrieked in protest. Smoke curled from the seams, with a sound like a dying beast. The locks sheared off, and the massive door ground open. Lyra stumbled, falling to one knee. Her form flickered violently, turning translucent for a terrifying second before solidifying. "Lyra!" Kai surged forward, gripping her shoulders. "You are burning out, that you cannot keep doing this." She shook him off, not unkindly, but with desperation. "Look," she whispered, pointing into the room. Kai looked. The Nexus array was not a computer, no, it was a cathedral. The room was vast, a spherical chamber lined with cooling towers. Suspended in the center, held in place by magnetic fields, was the array itself, a colossal lattice of crystalline shards, pulsing with a deep, rhythmic thrum. Data streams didn't just run through it, they were visible as beams of light, refracting through the crystal in a complex, shifting dance. This was the brain of the sector. It controlled communications, historical archives, sensor logs, and news feeds for a dozen star systems. "It is beautiful," Kai breathed, despite the terror gripping his chest. "It is a printing press for reality," Lyra said, walking toward the bridge that led to the core. "And right now, it is printing lies." She reached the edge of the interface platform. There was no keyboard. There was no screen. There was only a depression in the crystal, shaped like a hand, but larger, designed for a Dominion interface gauntlet, or a Dominion Royal. Lyra looked at the interface, then at her own trembling hand. "I have to go in," she said. "What do you mean?" Kai asked, stepping onto the platform beside her. "Just upload the drive. We have the recording of Verith." "It is not enough," Lyra said, her voice shaking. "The corruption is not just a file. It is the root directory. They have rewritten the validation protocols. If I plug in an external drive, the Nexus will reject it as a forgery." She turned to him, her gemstone eyes filled with a terrifying clarity. "I have to become the validation key. Kai, I have to interface my consciousness directly with the lattice. I have to weave the truth into the base code of the network." Kai stared at the massive, pulsing crystal. The energy coming off it was enough to ionize the air. "If you plug your mind into that thing..." Kai started, his voice cracking. "You are already unstable. Lyra, You are half code, half flesh. If you merge with a system that powerful, how do you come back? How do you separate the water from the ocean once you pour it in? I do not know if I can, Lyra admitted softly. No, Kai said. He stepped between her and the console. No. I am not letting you do that. We will find another way. We will blow up the transmitter. We will... There is no other way, Lyra shouted, the force of her voice surprising him. She grabbed his lapels, shaking him. Do you think I want this? Do you think I want to dissolve? I finally found a reason to be corporeal. Kai, I finally found someone who makes me want to stay in my own skin. Her voice broke, shattering into a sob that she quickly swallowed. But look at the screens, Kai. Look at what they are doing. If we do not stop this now, in the next hour, millions of people will die. My people, your people. They will burn because of a lie. I do not care about the millions, Kai yelled back, the truth tearing out of his throat. I care about you. The silence that followed was louder than the alarms. Kai stood there, chest heaving, horrified by his own selfishness and yet unable to take it back. I am not a hero. Lyra, he whispered, tears stinging his eyes. I told you I am just a guy, and I am terrified. I am terrified because looking at you is the first time I have ever seen a future that made sense. He reached out, his hands hovering near her face, afraid to touch her, afraid to break the moment. It scares the hell out of me, he confessed. You are a princess. You are made of light and code. I am a tech who fixes coffee machines. It crosses every line, species, class, duty. But I want you. I want your mind. I want your stubbornness. I want your body. I want everything. And the thought of losing you to that machine, losing you to the static, it ruins me. Lyra looked at him. The anger drained from her face, replaced by a softness that was almost painful to witness. She reached up and took his hands, pressing them against her cheeks, and she was warm. So incredibly warm. Love does not respect borders. Kai, she whispered, it does not check your clearance level. It does not care about species. It just is. She stepped closer, eliminating the space between them. If this is my last day, she asked, her voice trembling, if this is the moment I cease to be Lyriel Sath and become just a memory in a server, would you regret it? Would you regret wanting me? Kai looked into her eyes, those impossible alien eyes that held a universe of light. Never, he choked out, not for a second. He pulled her to him. It was a desperate, breath-stealing embrace. He held her as if he could physically bind her consciousness to her body through sheer force of will. He memorized the feel of her, the curve of her spine, the vibration of her dual heartbeat against his chest, the scent of ozone and cinnamon. Lyra clung to him just as tightly. She buried her face in his neck, breathing him in. It was the embrace of two beings standing on the edge of a cliff, choosing to look at each other rather than the fall. They stood there for a long moment, an island of silence in the middle of the engineered madness. Then slowly, Lyra pulled back. She kept her hands on his chest, feeling his heart race. A small, sad smile played on her lips, an echo of the teasing smirk she had worn in the archive, but stripped of all defense. When this is over, she said softly, if I am still here, I expect you to keep staring at me. Kai blinked, a tear spilling over. What? You heard me, she said, her thumb brushing the tear away. Keep staring at my body. Keep looking at me with that terrified, hungry intensity, because I am tired of being revered. Kai, I am tired of being a statue on a pedestal. She leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to the corner of his mouth. I want to be seen. and you are the only one who really sees me." She stepped back. She turned toward the Nexus. "Wait," Kai whispered, reaching for her. But she was already moving. Lyra stepped onto the interface node. She didn't hesitate. She slammed her hand into the crystal depression. The reaction was instantaneous. A blinding column of white light erupted from the base of the array, engulfing her. "Lyra!" Kai screamed, shielding his eyes. Her scream was a harmonic chord of pain and power. Then, the visuals shifted. Her body didn't burn, it expanded. She became a constellation. Threads of blue and violet energy shot out from her spine, her arms, her head, weaving directly into the crystal lattice. Kai watched in awe and horror as Lyra became the network. Inside the Nexus, Lyra was not screaming. She was everywhere. She was the signal. She was the data. It was an ocean of information, vast and freezing. She saw the streams of data flowing from the summit. She saw the fake footage, a complex construct of vector graphics and synthesized audio. But she saw more. As her consciousness expanded through the lattice, she saw the layers beneath the lie. She saw the emails between Director Hollis and Lord Vareth. She saw the bank transfers funding the mercenaries. She saw the algorithms designed not just to start a war, but to edit the history books in real time. They weren't just killing people. They were killing the truth. They were building a filter that would prevent the populations of both worlds from ever remembering that peace was possible. "No," Lyra thought. Her thought was a command that rippled through the system like a tsunami. "Not on my watch." She reached out with hands made of algorithms and grabbed the false stream. It was heavy, entrenched, protected by military-grade firewalls. She pushed back. She burned her own memories, her own energy, using the essence of her being as fuel to break the encryption. Outside the Nexus, in the physical vault, the blast door blew inward. Kai spun around, raising his blaster, a small, stolen security pistol that felt pitifully light in his hand. Lord Vareth strode through the smoke. He was terrifying. A giant in black armor, flanked by 4 Dominion shock troopers. "Stop the transmission!" Vareth roared, pointing his plasma rifle at the blinding pillar of light that was Lyra. Kai didn't think. He didn't weigh the odds. He fired. The bolt hit the shoulder of the lead trooper, knocking him back. "Cover fire!" Kai yelled at no one, diving behind a cooling tower as plasma bolts chewed up the floor where he had been standing. He wasn't a soldier. He was a tech. He couldn't outshoot them, but he knew this room. He pulled his datapad from his belt. He hacked the local environmental controls. Vent coolant, emergency purge. A jet of superheated steam blasted from the floor directly in front of the troopers. They shouted, recoiling, their sensors blinded by the sudden thermal spike. Kai scrambled to the next cover, firing blindly to keep their heads down. "Do not let them touch the console," he screamed, though Lyra couldn't hear him. Vareth marched through the steam, ignoring it. His armor shields flared, absorbing the heat. He raised his rifle, aiming not at Kai but at the crystal lattice. He was going to shatter the array. If he did, Lyra's consciousness would be fragmented into a billion useless bytes. "No." Kai scrambled out from cover. He didn't have a clear shot at Vareth, but he had a clear shot at the gravity generator on the wall above the warlord. Kai fired. Once, twice. The generator exploded. For a 10-meter radius around Vareth, gravity inverted instantly. The warlord was yanked upward, slamming into the ceiling with a sickening crunch of armor against metal. His rifle skittered across the floor, but the troopers were recovering. They leveled their weapons at Kai. He was exposed. He was out of tricks. He looked at the troopers, then back at the pillar of light. "Hurry up." "Lyra," he whispered, closing his eyes, inside the Nexus. Lyra felt Kai's fear. It hit her like a spike. He was dying. He was going to die for her. The rage that filled her was not digital. It was primal. It was the fury of a woman who had finally found something to live for, only to have it threatened. She seized the truth, the recording of the conspiracy, the real sensor logs, the audio of the plot, and she didn't just upload it. She weaponized it, broadcast. She poured every ounce of her remaining power into the command. The pulse didn't just come from the machine, it came from everywhere. A shockwave of pure white energy exploded from the Nexus array. It passed through the walls, through the hull of the station, through the bodies of everyone in the room. It knocked Kai flat. It knocked the troopers down. It slammed Vareth against the ceiling again before the gravity normalized and he fell to the floor in a heap. And then, the screens changed, all over the station, all over the fleet in orbit, on every data pad, every holo emitter, every news feed in the quadrant. The fake footage of the burning colony vanished. In its place was the recording from the observation deck. The face of Lord Vareth, magnified 10 feet tall, sneered down from the monitors. "We will execute them using Dominion plasma rifles. The footage will be real. Only the context will be manufactured." The audio was crisp, undeniable. Then, Director Hollis's voice. "Two profitable, chaotic futures." In the server vault, the silence was absolute. The Dominion troopers, who had been seconds away from executing Kai, lowered their weapons. They looked at the screen. They looked at their commander, Vareth, who was struggling to his knees. "Traitor," one of the troopers whispered. Vareth looked around, wild-eyed. "It is a trick. It is a fabrication." Then his own comms implant, set to an open channel, squawked. It was the Admiral of the fleet. "Lord Vareth, stand down. You are under arrest for high treason against the Dominion." Vareth roared, lunging for his fallen rifle. He never reached it. The troopers, his own men, opened fire. They didn't kill him. They stunned him, burying him under a barrage of blue rings until he slumped unconscious. Kai didn't watch. He was scrambling across the floor toward the interface platform. The pillar of light was dying. The crystal lattice had gone dark. The energy spent. Lyra, a figure, fell from the interface node. She didn't float. She fell like a dead weight. Kai caught her before she hit the metal grating. The impact knocked the wind out of him, but he didn't let go. He cradled her head, pulling her into his lap. She was cold, terrifyingly cold. Her skin was gray. The iridescent patterns were gone. Her hair was dull, lifeless strands. She looked small. She looked mortal. "Lyra?" Kai sobbed, shaking her gently. "Lyra, please, come back. Do not be gone." He pressed his hand to her chest. No heartbeat, no vibration. "No, no, no," Kai begged, rocking her. "You promised. You said you'd stay." Suddenly, a flicker, a faint blue spark jumped across her collarbone, then another. Her chest hitched. A ragged, gasping breath sucked air into her lungs. Her eyes fluttered open. The gemstones were dim, cracked, but they were there. She looked up at him, her vision unfocused. Did I do it?" she whispered, her voice a broken static rasp. "You did it," Kai cried, stroking her face, laughing through his tears. "You saved everyone. You crazy, beautiful idiot. You saved everyone." Lyra let out a weak cough. "I rewrote the story," she murmured. She tried to lift her hand to his face, but she didn't have the strength. Kai caught her hand and pressed it to his cheek. "Kai," she whispered. "The galaxy. They know the truth now, but they also know I leaked state secrets. They know I broke the seal of the Nexus." She looked at him with terrified eyes. "I am a traitor to the old order now. I broke the rules. Do you still want me? Kai looked down at her. He saw the cracks in her light. He saw the exhaustion. He saw the woman who had just sacrificed everything to be real. I do not care what they call you, he said fiercely, his voice cracking with the weight of his love. Princess, traitor, savior, I do not care. I just want you alive. He kissed her forehead, fierce and protective. I am yours. Lyra. Always. Lyra closed her eyes, a faint smile touching her lips. Good. She breathed. The sound of heavy boots surrounded them. Security! Drop your weapons! Kai looked up. It wasn't a rescue party. It was a raid. Human security forces swarmed in from one door. Dominion loyalists swarmed in from the other. They pulled Kai away from her. No! Kai screamed, fighting against the grip of two armored guards. Leave her alone. She needs medical attention. Get off me! Lyra was being lifted by the Dominion soldiers. They shackled her wrists with energy-dampening cuffs. She looked limp, barely conscious, her head lolling back. Kai, she screamed, her voice gaining a sudden, desperate strength as they dragged her away. Lyra. They were being pulled in opposite directions. The room was filling with officials, medics, and lawyers, creating a wall of bureaucracy between them. Kai struggled, kicking and thrashing, his eyes locked on her fading light across the room. I will come for you, he roared, his voice tearing at his throat. I promise. Lyra lifted her head one last time. Her eyes met his. There was fear there, yes, but there was also fire. I know, she shouted back, just before the blast doors slammed shut between them. And then, Kai was alone in the grip of the law, staring at a steel door, his heart beating a rhythm that belonged to a woman who was no longer there. The cell was a perfect cube of white ceramic, 3 meters by 3 meters, lit by a strip of fluorescent panels that never turned off. There were no windows. There was no day or night. There was only the hum of the ventilation system and the rhythmic arrival of a nutrient tray through a slot in the door every 6 hours. Kai Arden had been here for 3 weeks, or maybe 4. It was hard to tell when time had been stripped of its architecture. He sat on the edge of the cot, staring at his hands. They were clean now, scrubbed of the grease from the Nightjar's engine and the grime of the Kalis 3 sub-levels. They looked like strangers' hands. The door hissed open. Kai did not look up. He knew the routine. Get up. Arden, a voice said. It was Agent Thorne. Thorne was a man who looked like he had been carved out of granite and resentment. He wore the gray uniform of Earth Coalition Intelligence, unadorned by rank or medals. Kai stood up slowly, his joints popping. He walked to the metal table bolted to the floor in the center of the room and sat down. Thorne sat opposite him, placing a datapad on the surface with a heavy clack. You look tired, Kai, Thorne said, his voice feigning a sympathy that didn't reach his cold eyes. Sleeping well? Like a baby in a blender, Kai replied, his voice raspy from disuse. Thorne tapped the screen. We have been reviewing the transcripts from the summit. Again, there are discrepancies in your statement regarding the initial contact with the alien entity known as Princess Lyriel Seth. She is not an entity, Kai said, leaning back. She is a person, and I told you everything. She crashed in my sector. I helped her. We stopped a war. You are welcome, by the way. Thorne's jaw tightened. You exposed classified diplomatic operations when you leaked state secrets to the public domain. Do you have any idea what you have done? The coalition is in chaos. The Dominion has recalled its ambassadors. The stock market has crashed. And the massacre? Kai asked sharply. The 50 colonists who were going to be executed on live video? Did that happen? Thorne ignored the question. Half the Admiralty wants to pin a medal on you, Thorne said, leaning forward. They call you a whistleblower, a patriot who saved the soul of humanity. He paused, letting the silence stretch. The other half? They want to put you in front of a firing squad for treason. They say you were seduced by a foreign operative, that you are compromised, that you prioritized an alien fling over the stability of your own species. Kai laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Is that what they are calling it? A fling? You tell me, Thorne said. You spent 3 days alone with her. You hijacked a ship. You broke into a high-security vault. That is a lot of effort for a stranger. She is not a stranger, Kai said quietly. Thorne stood up, pacing the small room. The galaxy is burning Arden. There are riots on Mars. There are protests on the Dominion homeworlds. People are confused and they are scared. They used to believe their governments protected them. Now they do not know what to believe. You took away their comfort. I gave them the truth, Kai said. Truth is messy. Thorne snapped. Truth is a jagged pill. You think you won? You think because the video played, everything is fixed? No. You just broke the illusion. Now we have to live in the wreckage. He leaned down, his face inches from Kai's. And while you sit here, your princess is facing a tribunal that makes this black site look like a resort. Kai's heart skipped a beat. He kept his face neutral, but his hands clenched into fists under the table. What is happening to her? Kai asked, his voice low. Thorne smiled, a thin, cruel expression. She is being made an example of treason against the high houses. Her own people are tearing her apart. He tapped the door release. Think about that, hero. While you rot in here, she is paying the price for your little adventure. Thorne walked out, the door sealed with a pneumatic hiss. Kai sat there for a long time, staring at the white wall. He thought about truth. Thorne was right about one thing. It wasn't a victory and it was just an aftermath. The adrenaline of the chase was gone, replaced by the crushing weight of consequence. He lay back on the cot, closing his eyes. At least Mom and Dad finally have something interesting to talk about at Bridge Club, he muttered to the empty room. Our son started an interstellar scandal. Pass the biscuits. He tried to sleep, but his mind kept drifting back to the last time he saw her. The way she looked as the doors closed, limp, fading, but eyes burning with that impossible fire. I know, she had shouted. Know what? That he loved her? That he would come for her? Or did she know that promises made in the heat of survival rarely survive the cold light of a prison cell? 3 nights later, the routine broke. Kai was asleep, strapped into the mandatory REM cycle inducer. It was a headset they forced him to wear, supposedly to monitor his stress levels. But Kai suspected it was to keep him sedated with low-level theta waves. Usually, the device pushed him into a gray, dreamless void. Tonight, the void fractured. Static hissed in his ears, not the white noise of the machine, but the jagged, aggressive static of a signal intrusion. Kai? The voice rippled through his mind, bypassing his ears. It sounded synthetic, distorted, but underneath the digital artifacts, it was familiar. Kai jerked in his sleep, his physical body thrashing against the restraints, but his mind was anchored in the simulation. Who is there, he thought, or spoke in the dream space? It was the same thing. The gray fog dissolved. He was standing in a room constructed of neon wireframes, a digital construct. A figure materialized in front of him. It was an avatar, a rough sketch of a human woman with eyes that shifted color. Mara? Hello? Handsome, the avatar said, the voice clearing up. You are hard to reach. This facility has firewalls thick enough to stop a neutrino. Kai felt a surge of relief so potent it almost woke him up. Mara, how are you here? Where am I? You are in your own head, Mara said. I am piggybacking on the sedation signal. We do not have much time. The guards will notice the spike in brain activity in about 3 minutes. We? The Resistance, Mara said. It turns out, leaking a galactic conspiracy makes you popular with the underground. There are a lot of people who are tired of the lies. Kai, good people. And we have been watching you. She waved her hand, and the wireframe room changed. A screen appeared in the air, grainy and flickering. You need to see this, she said. The image resolved. It was a broadcast feed, marked with the seal of the Dominion High Court. It was a trial. The room was vast, an amphitheater of black obsidian. In the center, kneeling on a raised dais, was Lyra. Kai gasped. She looked terrible. The luminous quality of her skin, which usually radiated a soft, ethereal light, was dim, barely a flicker. Her iridescent hair hung limp around her face. She was thin, her cheekbones sharp enough to cut. She wore heavy, energy-dampening shackles on her wrists and neck, collars of dark metal that seemed to be drinking her light. But her head was high. A Dominion prosecutor, a tall figure in crimson robes, was pacing around her. You admit to breaching the Nexus, the prosecutor thundered, his voice echoing in the vast hall. You admit to altering the sacred archives? I admit to correcting them, Lyra's voice replied. It was weaker than Kai remembered, raspy with exhaustion, but the steel was still there. You shamed your house, the prosecutor shouted. You exposed our internal affairs to the humans. You made us look weak. I showed that we are capable of truth, Lyra countered. Is that weakness? Or is hiding behind lies the true cowardice? The camera zoomed in on her face. She looked directly into the lens, as if she knew Kai might be watching. They call my connection to the human a perversion, she said, her voice trembling slightly. They say that a seraphic royal cannot understand, let alone desire a biological human. But I tell you this. She took a breath, closing her eyes for a second. Empathy does not ask for permission. Love does not check a genetic profile. The fact that I, a being of light and code, can find a home in the heart of a human data technician. That is not a crime. That is proof. It is proof that we are not so different. It is proof that the war they wanted us to fight is a lie. The crowd in the courtroom erupted, some jeering, some screaming for silence. But Kai saw others in the background standing up, silent, hands over their hearts. The feed cut out. Mara's avatar returned. Kai stood in the digital silence, his heart hammering against his ribs. He felt a lump in his throat so large he couldn't swallow. She is amazing, he whispered. She is dying. Kai, Mara said bluntly. Those dampening collars? They are starving her energy field. If she stays in those chains another week, she will dissipate. She will just fade out. Kai looked at Mara. Get me out of here. Mara nodded. That is the offer. The network can extract you. We have a safe house on the moons of Jupiter. New face, new ID. You can be a moisture farmer. You can disappear. You will be safe. Kai stared at her. Safe? You did your part, Mara said gently. You stopped the war. You saved the galaxy. Nobody expects you to do more. If you go after her, Kai, it is suicide. The Dominion capital is a fortress. Kai looked down at his digital hands. He thought about the farm on Jupiter, the quiet, the safety. Then he thought about Lyra's hand on his chest in the server vault, the dual heartbeat, the way she had looked at him and asked to be seen. If I take the farm, Kai said slowly. I am just another person letting her be a symbol. I am letting her die for a cause while I hide in the dirt. He looked up, his eyes hardening. Safety without her is just a different kind of prison. I do not want to be safe, Mara. I want to be with her. Mara grinned. The avatar flickered with approval. I told them you would say that. The stubbornness is what makes you cute. The simulation began to shake. Red warning lights pulsed in the wireframe sky. They are tracing the signal, Mara said fast. Listen to me. Tomorrow morning, 0800, you are being transferred to a federal penitentiary. The transport manifest has been hacked. When the drones drop, you run. Do not look back. Where do I run? Follow the chaos, Mara said, her image dissolving. And Kai, try not to get shot. I have a lot of money riding on this. The simulation collapsed. Kai woke up in his cell, gasping for air, the echo of Lyra's voice still ringing in his ears. The transfer happened at dawn. Kai was shackled, hand and foot, and marched out of the cell block by 4 armed guards. They led him to the landing pad on the roof of the Black Site facility, where an armored transport shuttle waited in the rain. The air smelled of wet concrete and ozone. Kai kept his head down, counting his steps. He waited. As they stepped onto the ramp of the shuttle, a drone buzzed overhead. It was a standard security bot, a hovering sphere of black metal. Suddenly, the drone stopped. Its single red eye turned a bright, cheerful pink. Happy birthday! The drone screeched in a robotic falsetto. Then it exploded. It wasn't a lethal blast, it was a concussion charge. A wave of force knocked the guards flat. Smoke billowed, thick and purple, obscuring the landing pad. Kai dropped to his knees, bracing himself. The shackles on his wrists clicked. System reboot. The magnetic locks disengaged and fell to the deck with a clang. Kai scrambled up. Halt! A guard screamed from the smoke, firing blindly. A plasma bolt sizzled past Kai's ear. Kai didn't halt. He ran. He sprinted toward the edge of the landing pad. Below him, the facility stretched down the side of a cliff, a sheer drop of 500 meters into a churning ocean. To his left, a maintenance lift was rising. Kai leaped. He hit the mesh floor of the lift hard, rolling to absorb the impact. The lift was open air, carrying a crate of supplies. He punched the control panel, reversing the polarity. The lift jerked and plummeted downward. Above him, alarms wailed. More drones swooped down from the roof, their weapons tracking him. Target acquired. Terminate. Kai dove behind the supply crate as bullets pinged off the metal. Suddenly, the lead drone jerked sideways, rammed by a blurred shape. It was a cargo hauler drone, repurposed and flying aggressively. It slammed into the security bot, sending both spiraling into the ocean. A sleek, unmarked Corvette roared up from the mist below, matching the speed of the falling lift. The side hatch flew open. Mara stood there, wind whipping her hair, holding a magnetic grapple gun. Jump! Hero! She yelled. Kai didn't hesitate. He vaulted over the railing of the lift. For a second, he was falling through empty air, the gray ocean rushing up to meet him. Then the grapple line hit his chest harness. It locked tight. The cord jerked him upward, swinging him in a wide arc toward the ship. He slammed into the open hatch. Strong hands grabbed his jacket and hauled him inside. The hatch sealed. The ship banked hard, G-force pressing Kai into the deck plates as they shot upward, punching through the cloud layer and into the black of space. Kai lay on the floor, panting, staring at the ceiling. Mara looked down at him, a smug grin on her face. You look terrible, she noted. Prison does not suit your complexion. Kai laughed, a breathless, hysterical sound. Good to see you too, Mara. The ship was small, fast, and packed with people. Kai sat in the mess hall, holding a cup of hot coffee. Real coffee, not the synthetic sludge from the prison. Around the table sat the core of the extraction team. There was Mara. There was Jensen, his old supervisor from Aurora's Edge, who had apparently defected after the leak. And there was a Dominion defector, a tall, silent alien named Kalen who had been part of Lyra's royal guard before the coup. "We have a problem," Kalen said, his voice deep and resonating. Kai leaned forward. "Is it Lyra? Is she—" "She is alive," Kalen said, "for now, but the trial is concluding. The sentencing is scheduled for 2 days from now on the Dominion capital world, Ethelgard Prime. We go get her," Kai said. "We have a ship, we have weapons." "It is not that simple," Mara said, bringing up a hollow map of the capital. "The city is a fortress," she explained, pointing to the floating citadel. "But that is not the worst part. We intercepted a communication from the High Council. They are not just going to execute her, they are going to erase her." "What does that mean?" Kai asked, a cold knot forming in his stomach. Kalen sighed. "The princess is still linked to the Nexus array. When she interfaced with it to broadcast the truth, she left a bridge open. Her consciousness is partially entangled with the system. The High Council plans to use that link," Kalen continued. "During the sentencing, they are going to force a feedback loop. They will overwrite her memories. They will replace the truth she broadcast with a new, fabricated narrative. They will make her confess, using her own voice, her own mind, that she was lying, that she was mentally unstable, that the conspiracy was a delusion." Kai slammed his hand on the table. "They are going to lobotomize her, to rewrite history. They are going to turn her into a puppet," Mara said grimly. "And once the galaxy sees the princess herself recanting, the rebellion dies, the truth dies, and then they will kill her body." Kai stood up, pacing the small room. The image of Lyra, proud, defiant, brilliant, being hollowed out by a machine made his blood run cold. It was a violation worse than death. "We cannot let that happen," he said. "So what is the plan?" Jensen asked, looking nervous. "We cannot assault the capital. They have a fleet. We do not need to beat the fleet," Kai said, his mind racing. "We just need to get to the Nexus." He looked at Kalen. "If she is still linked to the Nexus, that means the connection goes both ways, right?" Kalen nodded slowly. "Theoretically, if we can get close enough," Kai said. "I can hack the signal. I can hijack the feed. Instead of letting them overwrite her, we can use the link to amplify her. We can let her speak, really speak, without the dampeners." "We have to get into the sentencing chamber," Mara said. "That is the Hall of Echoes. It is in the center of the citadel. We will need disguises," Kai said. "We will need a distraction, and we will need to be crazy." Mara smiled, spinning a knife on the table. "Crazy is our specialty." 2 days later, the ship dropped out of hyperspace on the edge of the Ethelgard system. Kai stood at the viewport. The Dominion capital world was breathtaking. It was a planet of silver oceans and crystalline continents. Glowing with a soft, internal light, it looked holy. It looked impenetrable. Somewhere down there, amidst the spires of glass and light, Lyra was waiting. She was alone, surrounded by enemies who wanted to strip away the very essence of who she was. Kai pressed his hand against the cold glass of the window. He remembered the way she had looked at him in the vault. The fear in her eyes when she asked if he would regret wanting her. Never. He had said. He meant it now more than ever. He wasn't the tired data technician who wanted to keep his head down. He wasn't the guy who scrubbed errors from the log. He was the man who loved an alien princess, and he was going to burn down the sky to get her back. You held on for me, Lyra, he whispered to the silence of space. Hold on a little longer. Mara walked up behind him. We are entering atmospheric orbit, she said softly. Stealth drives are engaged. No turning back now. I never wanted to turn back, Kai said. He turned from the window, his face set in stone. Let us go get her. The ship banked, diving into the silver clouds of Ethelgard, a dark needle piercing the heart of the Empire. The final act had begun. The approach to Ethelgard Prime was less like a planetary landing and more like a descent into a lucid dream. The Dominion capital did not sprawl. It soared. Colossal spires of living crystal pierced the cloud layer, rising from the silver oceans like jagged shards of frozen light. There was no ground to speak of, only floating archipelagos of white stone and glass, connected by suspension bridges that hummed with pure photonic energy. From the viewport of the stolen transport shuttle, it looked like paradise. To Kai Arden, it looked like the most beautiful trap in the universe. He adjusted the collar of his ceremonial technician's robe, scratching at the synthetic skin graft on his neck. It itched furiously. Stop fidgeting, Mara hissed from beside him. She was dressed in the flowing, iridescent silks of a high house attendant, a disguise that made her look regal but clearly made her want to punch someone. This fabric breathes about as well as a plastic bag. If I have to curtsy, I am going to shoot something. Just keep your head down, Kai murmured, rubbing a smudge of silver makeup from his cheek. We are here to fix the lighting. That is the cover. Do not make eye contact with the nobility, and do not sneeze, Kalen added from the pilot's seat. His disguise was the most convincing, mostly because he actually was a Dominion guard, though his armor had been repainted to match the lower caste of facility maintenance. The Hall of Echoes has acoustic sensors. A sneeze sounds like a gunshot in there. Kai looked out at the approaching citadel. It was a massive floating ring of gold and glass, hovering above the highest spire. Inside that ring was the Hall of Echoes. Inside the hall was the Nexus array. And inside the Nexus, waiting to be erased, was Lyra. Kai felt a cold knot of terror tighten in his stomach. He touched the small device in his pocket, a neural link disruptor that Lyra had designed back on the Nightjar, modified by Kalen to interface with Kai's specific brainwave pattern. It was a skeleton key for a lock that shouldn't exist. Let us go, Kai said, his voice steady despite the itching neck. We have a story to rewrite. The Hall of Echoes was designed to make an individual feel small. The ceiling was a dome of absolute black, simulating the void of deep space, while the floor was a tiered amphitheater of polished obsidian. In the center, suspended by anti-gravity fields, was the projection stage, a circular platform surrounded by the focusing lenses of the Nexus array. The room was packed. Thousands of Dominion citizens, from high lords to commoners, filled the tiers. The air buzzed with the sound of hushed whispers and the low, throbbing hum of the machine. Kai and Mara stood in the shadows of the maintenance alcove, high above the stage. They were surrounded by control panels and cooling ducts. Target is entering the chamber. Kalen's voice crackled in Kai's earpiece. The massive blast doors at the base of the amphitheater groaned open. A silence fell over the crowd, heavy and suffocating. Lyra walked in. She was flanked by 4 guards carrying heavy energy pikes. She wore a restraint suit of stark, blinding white, a stark contrast to her usual dark, shifting bodysuits. The fabric seemed to glow with a harsh containment field luminosity. It was tight, restricting her movement, designed to dampen the natural bioenergy of her royal lineage. She looked thin. The time in the holding cells had carved hollows beneath her cheekbones. The iridescent patterns on her skin, usually so vibrant, were dull, pulsing with a weak, gray light, but she walked with her head high. She did not look at the guards. She did not look at the jeering faces in the front row. She scanned the upper levels. Kai stepped forward just an inch out of the deepest shadow. Her eyes found him. It was a fraction of a second. Across 300 feet of crowded hall, her gemstone eyes locked onto his. Kai felt the impact of it in his chest, a physical blow. He saw the flash of recognition, the sudden widening of her eyes, and then the softening. In the middle of her execution, she smiled. It was a tiny, imperceptible thing, but it flooded Kai with enough courage to burn down the entire city. "I see you," her look said. "I am here," he promised silently. The High Inquisitor, a towering figure in robes of blood-red velvet, stepped onto the platform. He raised a hand, and the Nexus array began to spin. "Citizens of the Dominion," his voice boomed, amplified by the acoustics of the hall. "We are gathered here to witness the truth, not the chaotic lies spread by this traitor, but the objective memory of the state." He pointed a skeletal finger at Lyra. "Princess Lyriel Saith stands accused of sedition, of conspiring with alien radicals to destabilize our way of life. She claims she acted for peace. The Nexus will show us the reality of her heart." The Inquisitor slammed his staff on the ground. "Reveal!" The lenses of the Nexus flared. Beams of coherent light shot into the center of the room, coalescing into a three-dimensional hologram. It was a scene from the past, or at least, it looked like one. It showed Lyra standing over a map of the border colonies. Her face was twisted into a sneer of cruelty that Kai had never seen. "Let them burn," the holographic Lyra said, her voice distorted and cold. "If the humans die, my path to the throne is clear. I will rule the ashes." The crowd gasped. Murmurs of outrage rippled through the tears. "Liar!" Kai whispered, gripping the railing. That never happened. The scene shifted. It showed Lyra handing data chips to a shadowy figure. "Sell the codes," the fake Lyra hissed. "I want power, not peace." "Shame," someone in the crowd shouted. "Traitor!" Lyra stood in the center of the platform, the false images swirling around her. She did not flinch. She closed her eyes, enduring the assault of fabricated history. "They are overwriting her," Mara said, checking her data pad. "The Nexus is pushing these images directly into her neural cortex. If we do not stop it, in 5 minutes, she will believe she actually said those things." Kai pulled the disruptor from his pocket. "Not today," he said. He vaulted over the railing. There was a shout from the guards, but Kai was already moving. He slid down a support cable, landing on the gantry directly above the projection lenses. He didn't try to be stealthy. He jammed the device into the primary data port of the nearest lens. "Kai!" Lyra's voice rang out, real and terrified, cutting through the fake audio. Kai hit the activation stud. "Now!" The device screamed, a high-pitched electronic shriek that shattered the carefully constructed hologram. The false images of Lyra fractured into static. The Nexus array shuddered. The beams of light turned from a cold, accusatory white to a warm, blinding gold. Kai jumped from the gantry, landing on the platform next to Lyra. The impact jarred his knees, but he didn't fall. He stood up, grabbing her hand. "Link with me!" he shouted over the roar of the machine. Lyra looked at him, confused, her energy spiking. The restraint suit hissed, trying to contain her, but Kai's presence, his biological chaotic human signature, was acting as a catalyst. She gripped his hand. The disruptor synced their minds. The Nexus, confused by the intrusion, did what it was designed to do. It projected the strongest signal available. And the strongest signal in the room was not the Inquisitor's lie. It was their connection. The walls of the Hall of Echoes dissolved. Suddenly, the audience was no longer sitting in a courtroom. They were standing in a dusty, cramped archive on Aurora's edge. It was a memory, but it was shared. It was visceral. The crowd gasped as they felt the stale air of the station. They saw Kai, looking tired and young, staring at a screen. They saw Lyra materialize on the desk, glowing and terrified. "You like my body, don't you?" The whisper echoed through the minds of 10,000 people. But this time, they didn't just hear the words. They felt the intent. They felt Lyra's fear that she was nothing more than a biological curiosity to this human, that she was using her sexuality as a desperate shield because it was the only weapon she had left. And they felt Kai's reaction, not leering lust, but a sudden crushing wave of shame and awe. They felt his realization that she was a person, terrified and alone, and that he was the only thing standing between her and death. The scene shifted again. Rapid fire, the maintenance tunnels, the smell of ozone, the laughter over the squid rat on a stick. "You are dangerous," the memory Kai said. "I am lonely," the memory Lyra replied, a thought she had never spoken aloud, but which the Nexus now laid bare. The crowd in the hall was silent. The anger was gone, replaced by a stunned voyeurism. They were witnessing something forbidden, the raw, unfiltered intimacy of two species colliding. The scene shifted to the vault. The desperate embrace. "I do not care about the millions, I care about you." The emotion hit the audience like a shockwave. It was selfish. It was messy. It was undeniably real. In the center of the projection, the real Kai and Lyra stood together, their foreheads pressed close, oblivious to the chaos around them. The mindscape swirled around them, a vortex of stars and data. In this psychic space, they were not physical. They were avatars of pure thought. Lyra looked at Kai. Her restraint suit was gone. She was made of starlight. "You are showing them everything," she whispered, her voice echoing in the minds of the audience. "My shame. My vanity. I am showing them you," Kai replied. He reached out, touching her face. "I used to hate this form," Lyra confessed, the thought projecting outward to the silent crowd. "I was bred to be beautiful. I was designed to be a diplomatic gift, a doll for the Alliance to look at. I never felt real inside it, until you looked at me." She looked at the crowd, then back at Kai. "You did not look at the princess. You looked at the glitch. You looked at the mess. And you stayed." Kai's own thoughts rippled out, raw and vulnerable. "I was afraid of you," he admitted. "I was afraid of how much I wanted you. I thought it made me a traitor. I thought it made me a pervert. But it just made me awake." He pulled her closer. "We are not symbols, Lyra. We are not political statements. We are just two people who do not want to die alone." They kissed. In the physical world, it was a desperate clutch of hands and fabric. In the mindscape, it was a fusion of souls. The audience felt the electric shock of it, the terrifying, wonderful slide of boundaries dissolving. It was profound. It was consensual. It was an act of defiance that screamed louder than any political manifesto. The Nexus overloaded. With a thunderous crack, the projection shattered. The golden light exploded outward, blinding the cameras and blowing out the monitors. Reality crashed back in. The Hall of Echoes was chaos. The Inquisitor was screaming for order, but nobody was listening. People were crying. Some of the High Lords were sitting in stunned silence, staring at their hands. The lie, the caricature of the evil alien seductress, had been obliterated by the overwhelming weight of empathy. Kai stumbled, the feedback loop breaking. Lyra caught him, her strength returning as the restraint suit shorted out. sparks showering from the dampeners. "We have to go," Kai gasped. "Now!" Mara's voice yelled from the upper tier. Explosions rocked the hall, concussion charges set by the resistance. Smoke billowed from the vents. The gravity generators flickered, hacked by Kalen from the shuttle. For a moment, everyone floated. A transport platform, disguised as a piece of the stage, tore loose from its moorings and shot upward. Piloted remotely. "Jump!" Kai yelled. He grabbed Lyra's waist. They kicked off the central dais, soaring through the zero-gravity smoke. They landed hard on the rising platform. "Stop them!" the Inquisitor shrieked. "Fire!" Energy bolts zipped through the air, but the aim of the guards was thrown off by the floating debris and the panicked crowd. The platform smashed through the skylight of the hall, bursting out into the cool, thin air of the upper atmosphere. Kai and Lyra rolled onto the metal deck, gasping for breath. They were out. But they weren't safe. The platform banked hard, heading for the docking spires where Mara's ship was waiting. But a squad of Dominion elites, equipped with jetpacks, dropped from the patrol lanes above, cutting them off. The platform shuddered to a halt, cornered on a wide balcony overlooking the sea of clouds. There was nowhere to go. Behind them was a sheer drop. In front of them, 10 elite soldiers with leveled plasma rifles. "Surrender!" the lead officer commanded. "There is no escape." Lyra stood up. She ripped the shorted dampening collar from her neck and threw it to the ground. It clattered loudly. Her light returned. It wasn't the dim gray of the prison. It was a blinding, furious violet. Her hair floated in the static charge. She stepped in front of Kai, shielding him. "Let him go," she said, her voice vibrating with royal command. "I am the one you want. I will surrender. I will let you put me back in the cage. I will let you erase me." "Lyra, no!" Kai shouted, grabbing her arm. She looked back at him, tears in her eyes. "It is the only way." "Kai, they will kill you. I can trade my life for your safe passage." "I do not want safe passage," Kai roared. He stepped around her, placing himself directly in the line of fire. He had no weapon. He had only his technician's robe and his shaking hands. He looked at the soldiers. He looked at the officer. "Shoot me. Then," he yelled, "go ahead. Kill the human. But know this, you just saw inside our heads. You felt what we felt." He pointed at Lyra. "She is not a traitor. She is the bravest thing your empire ever produced. And I love her." The words echoed across the balcony. "I do not love the princess," Kai shouted, his voice cracking. "I love Lyra. I love the person who eats squid rat on a stick and cheats at cards. I love the person who taught me that alien is just a word for someone you have not listened to yet." He took a step toward the guns. "So if you want to kill her, you have to kill me first. And if you kill me, you are not killing an enemy. You are killing a man who chose love over fear. Is that what the Dominion stands for? Is that your honor?" The lead officer's finger tightened on the trigger, but the soldier next to him lowered his rifle. Then another. These soldiers had been in the hall. They had felt the mindscape. They had felt Kai's fear and his love as if it were their own. "Hold your fire," the second soldier muttered. "I gave you an order," the officer screamed. "I will not shoot them," the soldier said, taking off his helmet. It fell to the ground with a heavy thud. "They are telling the truth." The officer swung his rifle toward his subordinate. "Mutiny!" The balcony erupted into chaos, not a battle against Kai and Lyra, but an argument among the squad, shouting, shoving. The monolithic control of the high house fractured in real time, broken by the undeniable reality of two people holding hands in the face of death. While the soldiers argued, a shadow fell over them. Mara's ship rose from the clouds, the side hatch open. "Need a lift?" Mara yelled over the engine roar. Kai grabbed Lyra. They didn't look back. They jumped. The weeks that followed were messy. There was no magical peace treaty. The revelation of the conspiracy didn't fix the economy or erase centuries of prejudice overnight. There were still protests. There were still debates. The interim councils argued over trade routes and reparations. But the war was gone. The Emberfall conspiracy had evaporated the moment the truth hit the public feed. You couldn't convince people to hate an enemy they had just wept with. Somewhere in the neutral zone, on a decommissioned orbital station that had been repurposed as a botanical preserve. Life was quiet. The station was a sphere of glass, filled with plants from a dozen worlds. Vines of Dominion moon ivy twisted around earth oak trees. Kai Arden sat on a bench, wiping dirt from his hands. He was wearing a t-shirt and jeans, civilian clothes. He looked older, tired, but the tension that had lived in his shoulders for years was gone. Above him, a transparent data feed scrolled across the curved glass of the dome. Interim Council proposes joint cultural exchange. Princess Lyriel Saith still at large. Status: pardoned in absentia. Kai smiled, shaking his head. A shadow fell over him. He looked up. Lyra was standing there. She was wearing a simple tunic, her feet bare on the mossy ground. Her light was soft, contented, humming with a gentle rhythm that matched the sway of the plants. She was holding a basket of harvest fruit, strange, glowing pears that tasted like honey and static. She watched him for a moment, a playful smile curling her lips. Kai stared. He couldn't help it. Even in a tunic, even covered in garden dirt, she was the most stunning thing in the universe. Lyra laughed, a low, melodic sound. She leaned down, bringing her face close to his. Lost in thought. "Human?" she whispered. She raised an eyebrow. "You like my body, don't you?" Kai froze. It was the same line, the same tone, but the context had changed the universe. It wasn't a weapon anymore. It wasn't a defense mechanism. It was an inside joke. It was a shared memory of the moment their lives had collided. He didn't stammer this time. He didn't look away. "Yes," he said simply. He reached out, taking the basket from her hand and setting it on the bench. He pulled her down onto his lap. "I like your body," he said, looking into her gemstone eyes. "I like the way you glow when you are happy. I like the way you hum when you sleep." He ran a hand through her iridescent hair. "But I love your mind. Lyra, I love how stubborn you are. I love that you jumped into a sun to save a lie. I love that you chose me." Lyra's smile faltered, replaced by a look of profound tenderness. Her eyes shimmered with tears. "And I love you, data miner," she whispered. She leaned in. The kiss was slow. It wasn't the desperate collision of the vault or the electric shock of the ship. It was soft. It was steady. It tasted of honey pears and peace. Around them, the alien flowers and human vines grew together, tangled and inseparable. Their love hadn't fixed the galaxy. Politics was still a mess. The future was still uncertain. But as Kai held Lyra in the quiet light of the garden, he knew one thing for sure. They had rewritten the story. And tomorrow, they would wake up and choose each other again. That, Kai realized, was the only revolution that really mattered.